All right, Council, we will reconvene. Welcome, everyone. We've got a little more audience this morning. Director Culver doesn't take that personally. Presentation. Welcome, everyone. This is our SIC meeting for Council to review the budget and hear the various program directors present their budgets for the upcoming year. So far, it's been very good news. There's work to be done. So before we start, and we will be starting with IT, Mike Vansivik will be coming up, but before we start, if there's anyone in the audience that wants to give a 5-minute deputation about a budgetary issue before we get going, now is your opportunity. Yes, come on forward, please, and state your name and address.
Does this work? My name is Joan Schatz, and my husband Jeffrey Galil and I live at 199 3rd Street, which is the corner of 3rd and Birch. And we moved up here, 6 years ago. And the reason we chose our home is because of the neighborhood it's in. We moved with 2 young children, and it's a really great neighborhood. It's protected. I feel safe with my children walking to school. They attended Mountain View and CCI. It's close to downtown. It's close to their friend's house, close to the pool. And, you know, in the 6 years that we've lived here, which isn't that much time, I know by Collingwood standards, we've seen a ton of change in terms of development from a good standpoint, like great businesses moving into the area, a lot of new young families, particularly in our neighborhood. And there's also been some other changes, such as people speeding through the neighborhood, blowing stop signs. You know, we're fortunate enough to have a 4-way stop at 3rd and Birch, but I don't think most people understand that a stop sign is a stop sign. And I think 5 out of 10 cars probably actually just roll through the stop. And that makes me nervous with children in the neighborhood, pets, etc. And I understand that there's a desire to move traffic like that away from some areas into others, but we really need to protect our neighborhoods. We're really fortunate to have this neighborhood right downtown, and safety comes first. And it's very unfortunate, but we lived in Leaside, and our family was impacted by a tragedy there. There's a street called McRae, which routes traffic from there to Bayview, and very good friends of ours who are actually property owners in the town of New Mountain. Their 6-year-old daughter was killed crossing the intersection of Millwood and McRae by someone traveling way too fast and blowing a red light. And the reason that happened was because they're routing traffic through a neighborhood. And she was just coming from the public library walking home. It was awful, and I don't want to see that happen in Collingwood. So I do not support a couple of items in the budget, and I'd ask that you not support them until further investigation is done, and that is additional property acquisition in and around the 3rd and High Street area, and the addition of the stoplights there. It is going to route more traffic through 3rd, and I understand that in the current official plan, 3rd is designated as a collector road, which makes this possible for additional traffic to be routed through a neighborhood, but that plan is, I think, close to 15 years old. Collingwood has changed. The number of people up here is growing astronomically, and I really think we need to protect our neighborhoods, not route traffic through them. So I would ask that those items be shelved, be it temporarily or forever, until the official plan is done and some proper analysis of what the impacts of that will be, and whether in fact Thurs should even be designated a collector road, because I personally don't think it should, and I think anyone in that neighborhood would argue that it shouldn't, because it's not just the impact of Third, it's like water flowing down a stream. Any little ancillary roads are gonna be impacted as well. So I don't think it's just because I live on Third. I would argue that all the young families in particular in that neighborhood would argue the same. We need to protect our children, our elderly people, our pedestrians, and our cyclists, and our pets. Anyway, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, and perhaps when Director McDonald is speaking, he can speak to that particular presentation.
You want me to stay here?
Just if you could sign up, please, so we have your specifics. Is there anyone else that would like to speak before we get going? Please come forward.
Hello. Hello. My name is Dean Taylor, and I live at 135 3rd Street. And unlike Joni, I've been here all my life. You can't get rid of me out of Collingwood. But I was one of the people, I was about 7 years old, and I was one that came from King George School. We had to carry our books down 2nd Street to open the new Mountain View School. And I remember, it was one of my vivid memories, my first years in Collingwood, walking down the street. We didn't even have a police escort. And the neighborhood and the big old red bricks and the beautiful neighborhoods. And then we went to this great new school, and next, across the street, we played baseball in the Kinsman Park, and all that great outdoor space. And I think about, the development, and most of you know I'm pro-development and believe in growth in the community, but I think about increasing traffic down the heart of our community as something that needs to be carefully and vigorously reviewed, because we're going to take the oldest street in Collingwood, we're going to increase traffic right down the heart of it, and if I understand it correctly, that traffic was meant to go straight through to the parkway and then out of town. Whereas we have built 5 lanes on 1st Street after the official plan was last reviewed. We've also increased Poplar and the exit toward 26. So I can't quite understand why we need to increase flow through the heart of a residential district. So I would ask on behalf of my family for you to carefully review this design while considering all of the elements of safety, security, and the residential neighborhood. Collingwood is still a great little town, and I hope that your vision will continue to be to support both residential and commercial development in Collingwood. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, if you could just sign up on that, so we've got your name for the record today. Is there anybody else who would like to speak before we start? For Mr. McDonald. Oh, we got 2.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a couple of words. The issue that I have, that I got to get up to the 100,000 foot level and look down at Collingwood, look down at Central County, and I'm concerned with respect to the impact that growth is going to have here, and I know you people are as well. Highway 26 is a real issue. Perhaps we can deal with it in the Collingwood area, but when you take a look at the Craigleith area and trying to get around Thornbury, it's a major issue, and it's causing a lot of concerns. So what I question is that you have a 4-lane highway, 26 east coming into Collingwood, and you got to try to get the traffic around Collingwood somehow. So the bypass is essential. I mean, you look at any city around here, as they get bigger, you need bypasses. So if you're going north, going up the Bruce, then the issue you have is, how do I get around it? Well, you go along Poplar Side Road. This is what's shown on the MTO map and plan. You go along Poplar Side Road to try to offload, which that's trying to get in, they can't get through Collingwood. Then you go down, I think it's concession 10, go along Mount Road, down Hillsford Brook, but really they show it going down Silver Creek Road. And the Blue Mountain Watershed Study strongly opposed it. I think the thing needs a far more serious look at how that bypass can best be handled to look after the growth that's occurring in the Blue Mountain Watershed Region. And one of the issues is, in Simcoe County, they've taken out County Road 91. They've given it over to Walker and posting. That's not what should happen. It's difficult enough to get roads through the place. Intercounty roads going across Simcoe into Durham. That road should never be taken out of service. Somebody has to stand and count it. You can't just take a road out and not replace it with an adequate primary intercounty arterial road. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
You want to make sure you give us your name and address before you leave. Anyone else? No, you go right ahead.
My name is Rob Thorburn. I live at the corner with my wife of Thurs and Oak, my wife Margaret. We've been there for 20 years. Just some background. Our family is the owner of Scenic Caves and Drone Alarm and Fire Security. And in my early life, as an executive on Bay Street, EVP of Equities for the National Bank, I know value, and that will come later in this chat. 3rd Street, at the corner of 3rd and Oak, if we sit out on our deck, we watch accidents 2 or 3 times a year when we see the debris from accidents. If you look at the trees in front of our house, they're all scarred by the accident of people crashing on that corner. We notice constantly that cars are 10, 15K over the speed limit. In the summer especially, but also in the winter. 20 years ago, it wasn't a very busy street. Today it is extremely busy street. You look at in the mornings and in the afternoons and at night, kids going to school, bicycles, kids with carriages, and the bicycles don't drive on the street. The bicycles drive on the sidewalk for obvious reasons. The street isn't wide enough for 2 cars and a bike to make it safe. So our recommendation is that we put this thing on hold until a new study's been done on the whole town for the roads and the traffic lights and everything else that has to be done versus jumping at it now. As I said, on our corner, there are at least an accident every 2 or 3 weeks. Of those accidents, there are major ones 2 or 3 times a year. The area has a wonderful park at the top, has a wonderful swimming pool at the top, has a great public school at the top of 3rd Street. It also has a fire station on 3rd Street. There's a church on 3rd Street, as well as many heritage houses. I don't know why anybody would want to speed up traffic, direct cars down 3rd Street, when it's one of the gems and jewels of our town. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm suggesting that the proper planning be done, long-term big picture. 3rd Street can be obviously a part of that, but putting lights up at the top at this stage of the game is just going to drag 3rd Street into something that none of us really want to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thorburn. This will be the final call. Anyone else interested in addressing them? Oh, we've got more than that. Okay. Just so I get a clearer idea, is this all about 3rd Street?
All of it.
All about 3rd Street. So I think we've taken your point, and when we get to maybe Director McDonald, I think he may be able to address it, and if you want to speak, then you can. I don't. Oh, well, I think we'll give him an opportunity.
There's one more.
Pardon me?
Is there one more, sorry? Right now?
What I'm suggesting, I think, just because there's a large number that want to deal with the Third Street issue, is that when we get to the Director of Public Works, Mr. McDonald can address that at this time, or at that time, and then if you will have something to say then, or doesn't, or other questions, we can take note of them then.
Sounds great.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
All right. And just so you, Sarah, when is,
What about 1 minute presentation?
Yeah, one more.
I mean, you can't shut us off, we got all these people to come.
well, I'm not limiting their opportunity to speak. I guess what I'm
Yeah, I know.
saying is, why don't we do it at the time when we have Director McDonald here?
Right, some of us may have to leave, we've cut out big
We have to
portions
pick
of
the
the day
kids
for
up
that.
at school.
Okay.
I know I have to leave very soon, I'm sure Abby does too, so.
That's not fair.
Okay, if you can keep it really succinct, then we'll let you go now.
Okay.
And just for the audience, so when is Director McDonald slated to speak in the technology here? We're gonna have Mr. McDonald come up after IT. IT has to go because they have a prior appointment as well. So we'll have Mr. McDonald shortly, but if you have to leave now, then come on up and please say your comments.
Director McDonald.
Director McDonald's head of public works, and he is here, and he will be speaking after the IT person. So this issue will be dealt with. You can get some questions. I guess what I'm saying is we can get some answers to your questions at that time.
I don't have a question and comment.
Okay,
I'm happy with it.
okay.
Yeah.
If anybody does have to leave though, then you could come up now. We're
I
not
just have
trying,
to be out by 3:30.
I think we should be into Director McDonald by then, but I think someone else mentioned you might have to leave before then.
Abby, just go.
All right, go ahead.
My name's Abby Westlake. I'm fourth generation Collingwood local girl and have grown up on Cedar, Birch, and now reside on Beach Street. When my son was 5 years old, we were at the intersection of 3rd and Maple. Sorry that I'm upset about this, but he was hit by a car, and it was in a place that we thought would be and was a safe pedestrian point, and he was hit and dragged 30 feet down the street. And I cannot imagine if the traffic was increased that this would be a safe place for our children. I currently allow him to walk downtown, walk to school, walk to the public parks, but if it's going to increase traffic on 3rd Street, it won't be the safe place that we can trust our children to come. So just hoping to make a point, something good out of this accident, and keep the true streets valued where they are. Thank you very much.
Brian, do you have time for one more person?
Sure.
Mine is very similar to
Sure,
Abby's,
if
but
you're making similar comments, just keep
it's
it
similar
short.
but different.
All right.
My name is Bonnie Campbell, and I live at 248 Hickory Street, which is between 3rd and 4th Street, and 1 street over from Spruce Street, where Mountain View School is located. I am a former school chair of Mountain View Elementary School. We moved to this community of Collingwood when our children were in kindergarten and grade 2. We picked it because of the residential neighborhood, close access to the school, the park. Great skateboard facility now, which is drawing even more children into that area. My husband is also an emergency room physician in this town. He was indirectly involved in Rory's case, but he also is an avid bike rider and was riding his bike across 3rd Street, and he was hit by a car. As a 40-year-old man, broad daylight, hit by a car who did not stop at the corner of Oak. I do think that this needs some serious investigation on the complete flow of traffic in our town. I do see the traffic that is coming into Mountain View Elementary. That is going to continue as the housing that is being built on the other side of the park. As those children start coming into Mountain View Elementary School, as the increased subdivision of Red Maple happens and we have those families coming into Mountain View Elementary School, they've expanded elementary school. My concern too, so that's why I really feel that this needs strong investigation. Putting a light at 3rd is a good idea, because turning out off of 3rd onto 1st Street or High Street is very difficult in the winter with the snowbanks. So I'm not in opposition to that light. What I am concerned about is what that will do to the flow of traffic coming into town. And we already heard about a tragedy in Leaside But I think we need to investigate neighborhoods like Leaside where they have implemented traffic calming and have reduced ways of, or slowed cars down. And that is something that I think what we really need to be looking at is the big picture and the plan of how we're moving traffic around our community as our community continues to develop. We are not going to have smaller numbers at Mountain View Elementary School. There are going to be more and more kids attending that school. More and more people are moving into downtown Collingwood because they like to walk and ride their bikes to restaurants and shops. It is about a family, and we need to look after our neighbors.
Thank you. Go forward, Jack.
Just quick. My name is Jack Marley, I live at 173rd at Corner Beach, and I've got 3 pages of stuff about why we shouldn't do this, but you've heard most of it. But all I wanted to do is go to the bottom of it and ask that you just, there's an official plan review, I understand it might be taking place soon, and it's, I think an official plan, I don't know how many years ago, but probably more than 20, 3rd Street was designated as a collector road. You've all heard the town has changed a lot since then. I just ask that when the official plan is, put this decision of spending $3 million off, please. And just put it on the shelf until such time as you can look at the official plan and maybe redesignate 3rd Street as not a collector road. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, come forward.
I'll keep it really quick.
Good, thank you.
I'm Kate Hobson. I live on Cedar Street, and I concur with everything you just said. I just wanted to know I'm saying that. Late move on.
Please put your name on the gate.
Okay, well.
Hi, I'm gonna be very quick as well. Elizabeth DeFon Wetzel, I'm at 329 3rd Street. And I just want to point out to everyone, when you're reading that, any information about what's going on here, anything to do with accidents in the neighborhood, you will see a number of documented accidents on different intersections. Those are documented in that they were called in police reports, etc. On the intersection that I'm at, Cedar and 3rd, I see near misses weekly. There is a 2-way stop sign there, it's not a 4-way, that is part of the problem. I will not let my young children go out the door and cross that road unless I'm there. And that has completely changed in the last 4 years with the amount of traffic. I don't know what's happened to this place, but there's so many more people coming in at that area right now. So I just ask you, when you look at those stats and figures, know that behind that number, you could multiply that potentially by 10, 15, 20, for the number of near misses or accidents that actually happen but are not reported. And I just see this neighborhood, and I'm shaking right now, not because I'm nervous about this, because I'm so passionate about the downtown, beautiful Tree Street area is a huge reason why people come and move to Collingwood from other areas. And I see how much this can change in a really negative way. So thank you very much for all of you for being here.
Thank you, make sure you give your name on this. All right, I think that Mike will get recording started with the LT. And for those that aren't on the stage, there will be an opportunity during the discussion with Director McDonald for some discussion about the 3rd Street intersection.
So good afternoon, everybody, and council members, fellow colleagues, and members of the public here today. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the 2019 IT budget. I do have my colleague here, Lindsay Gosnell, who will come up really quickly and have a little bit of a discussion about GIS. So, first of all, I mean, before we kind of give you a little bit of a background, we're a very new department. The role of IT and GIS in our organization is to basically help the other departments and organizations meet their goals and objectives through the use of technology. So, new department as of 2017, coming shortly up on my 2-year anniversary. Colleagues Aaron and Lindsay started in May. When we started, there was a significant backlog of work that we had to overcome. Trying to get on the rails a little bit, we engaged a Perry Group for a
an master planning exercise with the efforts of providing us a roadmap for the next 3 or 4 years. Our immediate focus was on all of the foundational level infrastructure. And kind of as a result of that exercise and all the reporting and stuff we've done, this was our kind of start of 2018. Red isn't good, yellow is eh, and green is good. So I'm not going to go over our list of accomplishments because I think we would be here quite some time to speed up the process and get my other colleagues an opportunity to speak. Those are listed in your binders in terms of our list of accomplishments, but we did have a significant amount of accomplishments throughout the year, basically a project or 2 every month. The end result, as of the end of 2018, is we got a lot more green and some of the red is turned yellow. There will be some yellow that is consistent, and that will be around the areas of security because everybody needs security and some of it. In terms of our 2019 priorities, statistic-wise, we received 1,675 requests for service, and 45% of that is, what's listed there on the slide: software, email, network accounts, parameters, access control. It was a very well-balanced year where there wasn't anything more than 10%, so we try to look for gaps of where there's potential issues, and it was pretty stable. It was like 9, 9, 9, 8, 8, 8, and kind of trickled down from there. I'm proud to say that we achieved about 99.999 as best you can of uptime of network systems. We did have a couple of notable outages, more so around telephony speaking. We can't really predict when a contractor takes an excavator through a phone line, so that impacted our public works and engineering team. And our fire hall had a minimal downtime, and a fellow contractor around the road on 2nd Street was doing some cabling work on behalf of Bell and marking things up. So we did have a power outage at Town Hall. It was a 4-hour extended one, and I'm pleased to say that I'm glad that we're moving forward with a generator for Town Hall because that was one of our critical vulnerability points. So 2019 priorities, and I know that Marjorie had mentioned a lot of this on Monday, but we're going to review our 2018 and everything we put 2018 in 2018 for opportunities for improvements. I mean, we tacked a lot on last year, and so we want an opportunity to re-review as part of an annual thing to make sure that what we put in is meeting the needs and is configured properly and optimally and stuff. We're also going to go Ontario, and this will be an ongoing thing, but an ongoing security-related assessment. So we want to do a follow-up security assessment. We did do an initial security assessment in 2017, which led to a lot of action items. We need to do a follow-up to kind of measure our progress to date. Obviously, there's a lot of support, and I know that there's been a lot of talk about customer service improvements, and there'll be a lot of technology-driven solutions around parking and recreation, customer requests or service management, potential for virtual city hall. It's the synergies, and again, ensuring that we're finding synergies with our existing software as well, and as long as we're ensuring that those are meeting our needs and so on. We also have a phone system consolidation. Museum is, when I took over, we had 5 separate phone systems. We are now down to 3 because we were able to get rid of the OPP this year. Some hard work from Adam Blunt and Dave McConkey. So we're looking forward to moving forward with consolidating the legacy phone system that is at our museum. Again, a lot of it is around email, and I know that I've had a lot of offline discussions with all of you. Our email system is probably the one that has the biggest red flag at the moment, and we're looking forward, and what we have to do is to attain where we want to go. We need to do a double migration, so that's in process right now, and actually you'll see an email from me, not next week, the week after, notifying you that I will be moving your email boxes over to our new system. So that is an interim, so we have to kind of go 1 and then go 2 to get where we want to go. It's a bit of a daunting task. Another big initiative around the corporation as a whole is disaster recovery and the ability to maintain business continuity. We are looking to expand our disaster recovery site to maintain business aspects of the corporation. And we need to come up with a server operating system standardization. So that was some of the yellow that is there. We have a number of legacy operating systems that are soon to be retired. We've done our best to get rid of everything that isn't currently supported. But we look forward to moving forward to that. And so how do we get there? We are going to move forward with a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. So it's our opportunity for municipality to get up to date on all of our client licenses, our server licenses, our office licenses, and so on and so forth. We have desktop and laptop replacements. We've identified 94 units. We did a full asset inventory last year. 94 units exceeds 5+ years of life. It's probably, there's been an absence of a life cycle replacement in that area, and there's been a logjam, and so this is getting through that logjam. As I mentioned before, not that it is an IT priority, but it is a real highlight is getting a generator at home. Kind of future priorities, and really quickly, we've got an upcoming, again, library and our town hall system. So there's an opportunity as we take these 5, we moved it to 4, we moved it to 3, we'll be at 2, then hopefully we're at 1 in future years. We also have door locks and access control systems, and I'm just showing a picture of my colleague Aaron and Scott on the floor trying to break into a door that is faulted. So we've got legacy foam, or we've got legacy doors around the municipality that really don't have a key backup. So when the door fails, what do you do? So that was Aaron and Scott with the door hanger trying to. And we also have Windows 10 standardization because Windows 7, which is a current platform, and probably a lot of people in the audience will run, support for that ends in 2020. Alright. So I'm going to call Lindsay up very quickly, and she's just going to go over GIS right here.
Excuse me, so if you're wondering what GIS is, which most people do, it's more than just a map, it's geographic information systems. So anything that's spatial will have data, and it's more than just one piece of software. I always think of GIS as the glue that brings departments together. So what I have done for the past year or year and a half or so, we already had lots of GIS built out, so we've been reviewing and making it stronger and better, but I'm also reaching out to other departments that didn't necessarily have GIS. So for my priorities for this year, I'm just going to highlight a few of the projects. So I look at it as I have internal customers and I have external customers. So our internal customers are staff, be yourselves, our external customers are folks in the audience. So fire services is typically a department that didn't really have a lot of direct support. So I'm currently looking at creating a door-to-door mobile application that their staff can use for fire safety. From there, I'll build an operations dashboard so the management can actually log in and take a look at and see where the staff have been. Maybe they can start to identify and we can do some analysis that, these neighborhoods, maybe they're older, they're over 10, even if they're over 10 years, that we can, I can help them, do some planning. I'm looking at maybe a mobile application for fire service pre-plans. It's all about efficiencies for staff, and then we also have that geographic locations. Essentially, it's just geospatial databases. Bylaw enforcement, last year we created the online coyote reporting app. So from there, what I would like to do is build an operations dashboard. Right now, currently bylaw, they contact me to say, hey, have we had any reports? What I would like to do is have an operations dashboard, but they can just go in and take a look at it. And then when we move to Office 365, when someone logs in with the coyote report, they'll just get an automatic notification as well. Go ahead, thanks. Parks, Rec, and Culture. Last year we built out a lot of their parks, trails, points of interest. We spent some time collecting their information out in the field. They also have spreadsheets. So we'll be looking at, say Wendy's spreadsheets of information, taking a look at what GIS I have and merging this in together so we don't have duplicates. So we can all start to work off the same platform. From there, we will be able to roll that out for asset management and maintenance and inspections and using mobile applications for the staff. And our water department, they typically had a lot of GIS support through College Power Stream. And so we've been looking at their data sets, and I always think of it as that Netflix special, Marie Kondo, what brings you joy? So we're looking at cleaning up, maybe it's cleaning your closets and tidying up some of the data sets, bringing them all into a new platform, getting staff mobile access to actually edit and update and capture data in the field, looking at a valve inspection training program, so similar things, so they'll be editing and updating that information in the field. And so this here is what an operations dashboard looks like. So any data that you're collecting, you can pull that together so staff can take a quick look and see how many, and frozen services. This is a frozen services operations dashboard. So it's getting the data in people's face, so it's easily accessible, so they don't have to contact the GIS person and to find that information. They can actually, we can build all this information in so they can utilize it on a daily basis. So one thing I'm excited about is right now our current website doesn't have a lot. If you Googled our maps or our GIS in our current website, it's a bit lean. So this year, this is the, right now, this is the Planning Department Official Plan Interactive Story Map that I've been building out. It still needs a bit of work, but what I want people to be able to do is, people in the public, the residents, visitors, or even staff, to be able to zoom in and search by an address and find out the official plan, find out the zoning, all that information with simple clicks. So this one's currently, I'm gonna say is 60–70% there, and so I'm working with the planning department on that right now. So, this one is maybe a bigger project, but this is the Parks, Rec, and Culture Trails and Story interactive map that I'm working on. So what we're doing is we're capturing, so we have this interactive map, we have parks, trails, we can have any number of tabs across cultural pieces, so all the beautiful artwork that we have in even historical places, right? Anything that has an XY location, let's map it, and start building out this information. So for this one, for example, it's called, I think it's short tab, it doesn't really matter. So what you would do is you would come to this and you could click on Kinsman Park. You could look at the next slide. And then it would give you where that location is in Kinsman Park, maybe a thumbnail that's blown up, a little bit of descriptive text, and then additional links. So I can then link to another story map that would be just Kinsman Park with lots of photos. We can talk about programmable spaces or non-programmable spaces, or why there's areas that are not landscape versus, so it's not all just about playgrounds and parks, but it's actually giving families an opportunity to really take a look at the park. But we can also have a link to the Parks Division where you can get more information. So it's really bringing everyone together on the same platform and just getting that information out, and that's why they call me a map geek. It's more than that though. Okay, that's the next slide, please. Yeah, so these just quickly, Healthy Kids Mobile Park Program. We'll be able to load that tab into that Parks, Rec, and Culture, or have its own story map where the staff can show where that programming is, because it's heavily utilized by young families. Currently, right now, I've just started a project with Fleming College. They're post-grad GIS students, and they are going to hopefully create us a functional Trails mobile app that we can load to the Google Play Store. We'll see how it goes. Literally just starting their data, they got sent data today, so I'm working with them, so it's kind of exciting. And then I would also like to create lots of static and printable map products, because a lot of people like that when you go into municipality, you just want to see, just what the streets, where the streets are, where the parks are. You don't necessarily want to always zoom in and out, so building in some of that to help all the other departments as well. And as usual, there's always the regular, our infrastructure is super important, so there's always the updating, editing, and the management of that. Looking at a big project that I want to work on this year actually is looking at our town GIS users and like our needs, kind of a needs assessment, and taking a look at where there's some gaps and create a bit of a roadmap, not even a bit of a roadmap, so we can actually start to roll out governance, like that corporate approach for GIS, where everybody's on the same page versus this department and that department, where we all subscribe to the same platform. So that's a big project for me on a corporate scale, is our roads needs for GIS. So that's everything.
And just, sorry, thank you. Just very quickly, in terms of, and I know Mark is going to this on Monday, in terms of our budget pressures, obviously it's resourcing and having the hands to be able to do everything. So part of our budget is an ask part for an assistant for Lindsay in terms of a co-op position, as well as extending the contract of our current IT or third body staff who is actually back at the desk man and help desk. And that's about it.
Good. And before I put this on the table for council, is there anyone in the crowd who would like to comment on the IT budget presentation that you've just seen? All right, then I'll open the floor for questions from council. Councilor Coney.
Great presentation, Mike. Quick question. So of course I noticed in your 2018 with respect to the judicial inquiry,
Yep.
it was a big issue. We purchased laptops, telephone server, networking, Office 365 licenses, coordinated install cabling and services. Those costs, and that might be actually for Marjorie, are those accrued into our current costs for the inquiry to date, or is that reflected in your budget?
Through you, Your Worship, we actually have just one account where we're accumulating all of the judicial inquiry expenses. So we have had allocations for the salaries of the IT people, plus all of those purchases. So you won't actually see that in Mike's budget. It's sitting in the mid-budget.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry, if I can just on that point, sorry, through Your Worship. As well, we were being forward thinking in terms of the inquiry, so everything that we procure from an inquiry perspective is going to be repurposed after the fact to better our infrastructure as well.
Sounds good. Okay. If I may have a second, through Your Worship, and Mike, I'm sure this is for you or Lindsay. So I'm intrigued by the coyote tracking. It says this online survey allows the public to add pictures, comments, submit information. Where might the public find that?
It's actually on the, through Your Worship to Miracle. It's actually on the wildlife reporting form in bylaw on our town Collingwood webpage.
And if I may follow by asking, I'm curious, has the public provided a lot of input on this?
Yeah, last year they did actually. So what we had is there's always been a reporting form that they would export to like an Excel format, but there wasn't a proper geospatial location. It might say the trail behind Walmart. Where on the trail? So I took that information and manipulated that into a GIS table. When we loaded the survey into it's called Survey 123 actually. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Please submit.
Yeah, and then you put your address in, you can load pictures, you can put comments. So the bylaw department, they scripted it, I think there's 8 or 10 questions. So you can break down to what you saw, if you saw just a coyote walking by, or evidence of, or suspected kind of talk or something along those lines, and then that information is just saved in our database.
That's fantastic. Would you be so kind as to email me the link for that? Thank you so much.
Councillor Butt.
Through you, Your Worship, thank you very much for your presentation and clearly your hard work in a very young department. I have one question regarding email. You say there's 407 email accounts, but we only have 217 employees.
You're correct. So we have something called shared resource mailboxes. So finance at Collingwood.ca is a mailbox, marketing at Collingwood.ca is a mailbox. We also have shared resource accounts. So every time somebody books the branch room, books this room, those are all mailboxes themselves. So that's how you get to the 405.
Thank you. One more through you, Your Worship. And I want to talk a little bit about how GIS when it comes to infrastructure, and perhaps this is for you, Lindsay. So are you saying that in the not too distant future, we would be able to go to the Collingwood town website and have a look at a map of the town and see that the pipe on this street was installed in 1861 and the pipe on this street was installed in 1971 and the sewer on this street was installed in 1968? Or is that how drilling down you're going?
Well, I guess it's a two-part. So our data actually has that information in it. Asset management uses that install date. So we have the pipe type and the pipe size. Putting it publicly on our website would not be my decision. That would be a direction from someone else. So I know there's other municipalities that do have story maps that map out where all their infrastructure is. I would just want to make sure that our GIS wouldn't create more questions, that we would want to make sure that it was top notch. The thing with accuracy, you want it in detail, it's always an evolving thing, with development and replacement, so I always just want to make sure that we're on top of it. Yeah, we could make that.
And so as a follow-up of that, through you, Your Worship, So in the situation, so for example, a couple of years ago, we had several people who had frozen pipes.
Sure.
And neighbors who ran water pipes to them. Is that the sort of information that we can also keep track of? So if this house has frozen pipes 3 years in a row, perhaps there needs to be some addressing of that water main, or?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. Yes, actually, we actually tracked that already. So we had a couple of different data sets. So each year they did a separate point file. So we, with Marie Richardson, in the water department, we created one cohesive data set. And so now we can start to do analysis on this sort of thing. So actually the water operations, you can zoom in and take a look at one property and see that it's been hit every 3 years. And then the water department can take that information and analyze it and use it to whatever they need to.
Thank you.
Councilor Hamlin.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. I just have one question through you, Your Worship. My question has to do with the technology at council meetings in town hall. And many times our items have to do with looking at a map of where a property is. And the scale is usually so small, and from my totally untrained eye, the technology perhaps isn't sufficient for us to be able to, even see where the property is. And have a look at those maps. Is that something that you're looking at, or is that a matter for your department?
Well, I guess, it's technology driven, I think it touches our hands in some shape or form. What I do rely on is your feedback, so again, being brought to my attention now, it's something that we can certainly look into. I mean, it's the right sort of through worship. Is it a question of issues looking at it through the device that you're using? Or is it we're talking about on the projection screen and stuff? Okay. Yeah, scaling on that. Sorry, I'm going to defer to Lindsay as well. I'm sorry.
I would like to see what maps you're talking about and see if we can come up with a solution. I'm sure we can do something to make this easier.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mansfield. The over sort of, I guess, part of the question I have with regards to IT is more specific to security. All these programs that you're working on are fantastic, but we have seen the Solid Beach, we've seen Midland, et cetera, have to deal with cyber attacks and pay out through taxpayer dollars to gain back their own intelligence. Can you just comment, specific to the budget, that you've got the sufficient resources from us as a governing body to protect the municipal asset, which is the IT department?
Thank you. Yeah, good question. Through your worship, I mean, we made significant investment in 2018 in terms of threat management and all those sorts of features. Obviously, security awareness campaign. Really, in terms of those sorts of threats, really the buck stops with the human firewall, which is user education. And obviously with for CAO's support and council's support, we move forward with a security awareness training campaign. We have, I'm confident that what we have in place is going to meet our needs today and our needs into the future. It is a matter of maybe resourcing to be able to keep on top of it. Because, I mean, it's not like it's a static threat. The security is an evolution and it continues to evolve. And it's a matter of being able to stay on top of those threats through education. Aaron has done a really good job in terms of taking the lead in that project. And just having the available resources to if we do identify a risk, to be able to react to it.
Just a follow-up, and it's specific on behalf of the two of us sitting here. Are you confident and comfortable with the resources you're getting from the county as it relates to security actions?
Yeah, the county has, through your worship, thank you. The county has provided, some appropriate assistance. I mean, they're good to lean on when you have questions. I mean, county really doesn't support Collingwood IT. With the only thing that they do provide us, and obviously support for the library here, which is a separate piece of infrastructure, is they provide us our internet pipe. And so they have controls on their end as well to mitigate any sort of risks through unified threat protection management and various features like that. So if we did need to leverage their resources, they've been good to bang ideas off of, or hash ideas out, I'm sorry, and to, like I said, I'm looking for security awareness training products. They were very good at educating me in terms of, the various offerings that are out there to help us make a better decision.
So any other questions? A quick question, Mike, just following up on the deputy mayor's comments. I understand there's insurance as well that the town can purchase to cover out-of-pocket expenses and any effective ransom that has to be paid. Do we have that covered?
Yes, we do.
And that was really my question. The only comment is congratulations to you and your department. It's been a very short period of time in which you've had to come in and do a lot. And it's very exciting to see our website and how we interface with our residents being updated so that we're much more accessible, I think, and able to hear the voice of our residents and respond to that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Director McDonald. Welcome, Brian, John. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. Today, we're here to present the budget for all of the divisions under my responsibility. That includes engineering, public works, roads, transit, fleet facilities, water, wastewater. Collectively, these represent approximately $20 million in operating costs, and depending on the year, $15 to $20 million in capital expenditures. Within that whole division, we have 60+ employees, and in different levels of responsibility. Today, I have with me my managers for my different divisions. John Bellick with engineering, Dave McNulty with fleet facilities, and Peggy Slammer. I have a large slide deck of each division, and in the interest of time, I think we're going to move through some of these that have been discussed before or in the book, and open up more time for questions. But before I go through the slide deck and flip through them, I thought maybe it might be best to zoom in on the 3rd Street intersection and explain to council, if you want to open it up to questions and then go back to it, or would you rather me do my whole?
Well, why don't you give your answer on 3rd Street and then take us through your presentation, and afterwards, if there's questions, we'll deal with those. Okay.
So the 3rd Street project has been in the works for a number of years now. It's being done in conjunction with the proposed development of the former Harding Carpets lands. It was initially planned by as part of our capital works, but not until 2023. With that development moving ahead sooner, there is a need for a traffic signal at 3rd and High. Their development will then come out at 3rd and High. The approval of Home Depot and the signalization at Home Depot was an interim approval that happened 10+ years ago, and the intent was the whole development around there would develop, and the traffic signal light at Home Depot would move to 3rd and High. There's a road network coming out from that approved development at 3rd and High, and so the need for signalization at 3rd and High, even now with the traffic, is something that needs to move forward. The proposed works include relocation of the signalization to 3rd and High, and turning lanes, left turning lanes on all 4 intersections. So right now, High Street is 4 lanes. There'll be a 5th lane and a turning lane on High, similar to what the configuration is now at the Home Depot We are seeking budget approval at this time. The plans of the actual specific works will come before council at a later date because it is being done in conjunction with the development. The development approvals will come before council. It's a front-ending agreement because the developer wants to get moving ahead of our schedule. They'll be paying for this work. We'll be paying them back at a later date in 2023 or through development charges credits. So we're not seeking approval of the specifics of the project today. It's the place marker for the budget approval for the expenditure, but at a later date we'll be coming before council with the details of the plans of that intersection. So I'm going to turn it over to John. He'll quickly go through his slide deck.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor and Council. In the interest of time, I think Brian went through a lot of our accomplishments briefly yesterday, so just time to skip those. If you could please get to the objective slide. So our objectives from an operating perspective for 2019 are 5 studies. The first being the transportation study. This is a $70,000 project, and what it does is it essentially analyzes our entire road network and IDs improvements as they relate to growth. The next study is the master stormwater study. This is a $300,000 project, and this is to produce models showing how the town would react to significant storm events. It's a tool to be used during our development review. And it would also inform future stormwater fees should council wish to pursue that option. Third study is the Pretty River Spill, and this study is $40,000. It identifies the amount of water that would breach the Pretty River dikes should a large storm event occur. There is currently a spill through the downtown area from the Pretty River during a large storm event, and through development applications, still doesn't exist, and we'd like to further pursue this to prove it doesn't. We need to finalize the master servicing sanitary and water project, and we'd like to do a 5,000 sanitary video inspection. This is essentially putting a camera down our sanitary pipes to pressure the pipes of sewage projects. Next slide, please. So we have 11 total projects. We have engineering projects, we have engineering design projects, we have construction projects, and then we have some carryover projects from 2018. Next slide, please. The first project is $350,000 for the Mountain Road 10th line detail engineering design. We're completing the EABA as we speak, and we'd like to move into detailed design. $200,000 of that money is earmarked for property acquisitions. Next slide, please. The second project repairs to storm sewers at 100 Minnesota Street. We have essentially a collapsed sewer in that area, fix it, and $70,000 would be for the engineering. And this project, and then next year would be construction. There's about $400,000 construction to do that work. And this project we've applied for OSIP funding from the provincial government for $250,000 of that, which we should be finding out for later this year. Next slide, please. Third project is Napier Street South Sanitary Renewal. This is our yearly sanitary renewal project. This is for the design work, and then next year we'll be doing the construction. Next slide, please. Project number 4 is the installation of left turn lanes at Lockhart here in Ontario. We've been working the last few months design work for this project. There's a lot of traffic at this intersection. It's been a problem for a number of years. It backs all the way up to Bowling Alley, and left turn lanes at the side streets will alleviate that. It also includes water main repairs all the way to Maple Street. Next slide, please. Project number 5. I don't think we talked about, Ryan summarized that one. Next slide. 6 is crosswalk here on Ontario Street. This is about $88,000 in capital costs, and I'll get to that later this summer. Next slide, please. Project number 7, 70 Huron Street. This is a Park Ridge property. There's an existing drainage issue through that property, and we'd like to resolve it through the redevelopment of that site. So that will be done in conjunction with the development of those lands. Next project, number 8, Napier Street North. This is our annual sanitary renewal, so this is our annual construction. And we'll be redoing that road, we'll be redoing the sanitary, the storm, the road this summer, probably start in May. Project number 9 is asphalt resurfacing. This is our yearly project, our yearly resurfacing program, $350,000. These are our 2 worst roads in town. The sewers underneath are in fair shape, so what we'll do is we'll just shake and pave, put new asphalt surface on top, and some minor drainage improvements. Project number 10, next slide please, is 2nd Street sidewalk. It's a carryover project from last year. It runs from High to Spruce. We'll be installing sidewalk on the south side of the road. This will be done in conjunction with the PRC work at Heritage Park. I guess this is a good time, Deputy Mayor Hall had a question yesterday about how we decide on where to put sidewalks outside of development. So if it's a local road, and we're reconstructing full depth reconstruction, we usually put the sidewalk back in place where there was sidewalk to begin with. If there are gaps, such as on Napier Street, there was a sidewalk that just ended in someone's lawn and didn't go any farther, then we would fill that gap in. Local streets, we usually put sidewalk on one side. If it were a collector or an arterial road, we always try and put sidewalks on both sides. Putting sidewalk where there was a sidewalk before in an existing built-up area can be difficult. People like the idea of sidewalks, but once they realize the impact to their front lawn, they kind of cool to the idea, because instead of having 3 parking spots, they might have 2, and might lose a garden. So it can be tricky. Adding sidewalks for businesses. Does that answer your question? Or I guess there's a chance, opportunity later. Next slide, please. Project 11. This is the MPO project on Highway 26. They did about 80% of the work last year. This year we'll be putting on top of asphalt, some signal work, and some restoration. Next slide.
This is the capital component of the public works. We have a number of vehicle replacements, and all our vehicle replacements this year are carryovers from last year. We were late in tendering them. Some have been tendered and we're waiting to close them, subject to council approval on Monday. And there are some that are pending for closing. So we're looking at replacement of an SUV, plow, sidewalk, 2 sidewalk plows, and a flusher truck, and an additional sidewalk plow through our development charge funds, and garbage truck that will be shared with Parks and Rec. These funds are within a reserve. We have an equipment reserve that we utilize to pay for this equipment. Pressures. So aging infrastructure is always a pressure for us. We have been doing a number of crack sealing over the year, but we're finding that we're not catching up. We need to do more crack sealing, and this is preventative maintenance. You put crack seal in pavement that is 5 to 10 years old, and it adds a lot more life to the asphalt. So we're asking for an additional $20,000 there, so we can do more crack sealing. First Street lights are showing premature rusting, and we'd like to do a review of that, ensure they're structurally sound, and come up with a plan to repaint those lights. So this year it's the evaluation, and then hopefully the following year we can have a plan to repaint those lights. Development growth is also pressure. The Pretty River Spill study, as John had talked about, storm and sanitary modeling software. We'd like to purchase software so that we can keep update with recommendations, but also keep our own modeling of our master servicing. The summer student, we've had summer students in the past. We haven't had them in the last couple of years because they haven't been part of our budget. We'd like to reintroduce one student, and it will help us out with our workload and doing some of the minor tasks like traffic counts, etc. Transit, extended hours of service, we've talked about that several times, and there's an additional mapping and advertising funds that we would like to request. Transit is short, I can pause there or do the 2 slides for transit.
Let's go through the 2 slides.
2 slides, okay. So transit accomplishments, we did the transit terminal and the washroom, as well as we did the trial for the extended hours. In terms of, next line, in terms of objectives, we're not proposing any rates this year, and that's consistent with our neighboring municipalities. They didn't propose rates. We are looking for the permanent implementation of those extended hours. We found them to be extremely successful, and we've done a report on that, or an update on that. Additional funding is required for the maps. We'd like to replace one of our 30-foot buses. It's 2007, so it's served us well. Carryover projects, Red Cross bus, it's a cutaway bus. It's our accessibility bus that we do in partnership with Red Cross, as well as we'd like to automate and track the bus so that people know where the bus is at all times, and they know whether it's late or on time, and they would also be able to sign up and get notifications. So we'd like to move forward with that, provide a better enhanced service for the users. And that's it for transit and public works.
Okay, before I open the questions to council, I will ask the audience if there's any members who would like to speak on the public works budget presentation. Matt? We're just talking on the budget aspect of the presentation.
Yeah, I'm glad I saw that. Engineering interests me because it shows us where progress is. From what I could read from the book, it looks like this 10th line Mountain Road is a big priority. I think it was listed as number 1 there. And that's great to see because now we've got the connection with the highway from the beach across. And that's way safer. Going into town, and we're going to get that light fixed coming, when that's all completed. I have a question for either Mr. McDonald or Mr. Velick about there was a very long, drawn-out council meeting with the Park Bridge 4 to 3-story development, and obviously getting that site prepped for sanitary sewer and all that jazz. I have a question. I'd just like to know if there's a pedestrian light scheduled for that area or Niagara Street. Was that, I wasn't sure, it wasn't really on the map, but I'd just like to ask about accessibility across there. And as we know, that's a real issue for people trying to get across the road, like when the cars come around. A little more traffic control there would be really nice to see that bridge with parks and then residential. So I'm just wondering, with that straightening the north side, are we going to see a light at Niagara Street or a pedestrian cross light somewhere bridging that new development? I think that's really all I have in mind right now.
Brian, is that something we can answer off the top here?
But certainly, we're most interested in a crosswalk at that location, Niagara and Huron Parkway. That is part of the connecting link, and any crosswalk or signalization requires an approval. We've done several studies. The most recent study was done last year. Unfortunately, it does not meet the warrants for a crosswalk, but we are lobbying or whatever, we're approaching the MTO to try and make them or have them make an exception to that potential crosswalk at that location. And if we get that approval, then in subsequent years, are tied to their approval process because it's part of the provincial highway.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm just wondering, when you update the mapping for the water course in the downtown core, if you'll be working in conjunction with the NBCA for the Oak Street Canal and having them update the water course and building limitations that we have.
Yeah, so for you, Congressman, the updating of that project will, they're two separate projects. The updating of the planning documents around the Oak Street Canal will be done separately, but I actually just had a meeting with the NBCA this morning about that, and we will be working forward towards resolving that, because that is an issue for a lot of homeowners in that area. So yes, it will be looked at.
Okay, and sorry,
Just not through that stream.
Okay, and my second question
Sorry,
is.
if you can just come forward, because we're live streaming this, I want to make sure that people get the benefit of the questions.
The second part is, do you look after budgeting for new water services on Beach Street? At this time, I don't have water at my house, so I can be my neighbor. And just wondering if that's going to be updated.
Is that a result of frozen service?
Frozen service, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Certainly, we have a program where we're evaluating those frozen services, and we will have to do some improvements. At this point, we're just evaluating where the priority projects are, and they'll be part of future infrastructure improvements, but it's not part of this year's budget.
Okay.
But it's definitely, we have monitoring, as was said earlier with the GIS, we monitor every house that has those issues, we send out notices. It's certainly something we are developing a plan that will be dealing with that at a future time.
This year was an interesting year for me and my family. We had the water running in our house and had not received notification to be aware of freezing levels. We were told that someone at the Public Works Department wanted to take a backseat approach this year to getting out information about freezing, and then emergency meeting was held at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that they were then going to hook us up.
Peggy, can you shed some light on this?
Sure, through the mayor. So, without knowing the exact details of your particular property, what we did this year with the Frozen Services Watch is we had a two-tier approach where we had contacted certain homes that we thought were the most, we had in our categories of most vulnerable, and asked them to initiate running a tap if they felt that they were vulnerable. And then we went to a second tier as we went through our program where we monitor temperature and we're monitoring frost as best we can, and then we issue those at different levels. So it's always possible that conditions change, and so potentially your home maybe wasn't on our records as having frozen before.
It would have been.
Oh, okay. So I can look into exactly what that happened, but absolutely, as Lindsay had mentioned, we have very good data in the GIS system, and we spent a lot of time working with Lindsay and in our own department just to refine that and refine our whole frozen services watch. Within our budget, we do have a earmarked annual amount that we just have there earmarked for general service replacement. And so some of these properties, we have already identified that we will be working to resolve those on our side if we found that they were frozen on our side, so.
Hey, maybe you can just connect with Abby to make sure you've got the records and that we're connecting here, so we're not letting anyone slip through the cracks.
Yes, absolutely.
Brandon, do you want to add to that?
Just on the frozen service, we keep track of the minus days, we monitor the frost. We have now looked at what they call frost probes that we're going to be installing in various locations where we have these problems, so that we can actually know the actual depth of the frost. So it's not an exact science. Two people in one location could be frozen and someone not, and it's something we have to work through. And it's, we're certainly not taking a backseat approach, if I can assure you on that. It's perhaps that you were labeled as a tier 2, and maybe should be labeled as a tier 1, and we can correct that information as we move forward.
Yeah, I think that's the way it was kind of communicated through Public Works that came to our house. It was interesting.
Yeah, that's not the case.
We'll connect and make sure that. Any other comments?
I have a question.
Yeah, go on up.
Just back to the Third Street with respect to the development on the other side of High Street and the rerouting of traffic from Mountain Road to that intersection at High, which will cross onto Third. Is that contingent on Third being a collector? Because in the new official, as we've talked about in the comments have been about the official plan being so long, and in that plan Third is designated a collector. Well, what if it's in the new plan designated completely residential, and you have a major traffic throughway diverting traffic from Mountain Road right through the center of our town? I'm just wondering, is it contingent on?
That property, the development of that property has received draft plan approval. The road itself is consistent with the existing official plan, identifies that road going through from Mountain Road around to 3rd Street, and it has draft plan approval. So it would be extremely difficult to make that change at this time because they already have previous approval for that type of road configuration. In terms of it being contingent on 3rd Street being a collector road, that was part of certainly could have been part of the intention with that whole configuration of that road going up to Mountain Road, would have been part of that the previous approval process.
Hi.
Hi.
I'd like to ask when this was approved, when this official plan designating 3rd Street as a collector road was approved? And what part? Are we talking 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
I don't know the answer to that, unless Catherine was here in Spanish. Nancy?
Like, I'm assuming it changed from a minor road at some point.
Excuse me, yes, Mayor Saunderson. Actually, 3rd Street and Ontario Street have been collector roads in the town's planning documents since, I believe, 1974. So one of our early official plans. Now, I guess the other point that I would like to make is, our official plan, our current official plan is dated 2004, but since then there have been traffic studies. So our traffic study is not 2004, our traffic study is 2012, right? And so the 2012 traffic study, and I'm sure Brian or John can correct me if I'm wrong, didn't indicate that there was, or it still supported the designation of Ontario and 3rd as a collector road in that report. There was no indication in 2012 that there was a need to change that designation of 3rd Ontario. So I guess it has been something that's been around a very long time, and I guess the last time we looked at it in any kind of detail would have been 2012.
Thank you, Nancy.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, you can. I just want to be absolutely clear, everyone, this is a budget meeting, and so this project you're dealing with, we understand your concerns absolutely, and they will be dealt with moving forward in the planning and design process, as I understand it. So I'm not sure that today is really the forum for us to be able to air out all this stuff, but I'm certainly happy to hear your concerns. I think the question answer stuff, we can take the questions, and then we will certainly, we've got your names on record, and we'll notify you moving forward as this thing unfolds.
Well, I'd like to say that I think that the concern amongst people here is that if we move forward with this budget, approving, looking into this intersection, that we're going to be on a track that we can't get off. And I would say, as I said before at the committee meeting, that the priorities have changed in the tree streets, that you're not looking for a highway running through the middle of town. And I have heard, and I could be wrong, that the official plan should be looked at and updated every 5 years. And I think we're well beyond that. And maybe this is something that needs to be addressed. So I would say that I think, Jack may have said this before, that this should be deferred at this stage. Like, I think that this shows support here today in the middle of an afternoon should be recognized. And
And we
if
do
we're here in
recognize
the
that.
evening, I think we have way more detail.
Yeah, no, I appreciate everything you're saying with selection, but this is a budget meeting, and just because we allot a budget amount doesn't mean that the project is approved and moving forward. However, once we get to the project, if we haven't approved the budgeting, then we're chasing our tail. So this process today is just for public comment and to put the budget on the table, and we absolutely appreciate all of your input today. But if the budget is approved as is, that does not mean that this intersection has been approved with changes. It still has to go through other approval processes. So they're two distinct steps. Okay? But I appreciate everyone's coming out today. And we've got your questions, and if you haven't left us with your address or spoken today, please do, so that you'll be on the list for future communications. Matt, you've been up once. We're good.
I have one more.
No, we're good. We're good. I'm going to put this on the table for council unless there's anybody else who wants to speak.
One quick question of Mr. McDowell, if you don't mind. You said
Just check, you can come forward.
an approved draft approval of a development on the Home Depot site and the former Harding Park site. Can I ask you who the developer is? Is it one developer or multiple?
It's my understanding there's multiple developers that are, the receiving company for the Harding property is one of the owners, but there's another smaller parcel of land who are a shared partner in the overall development.
So it's a consortium of.
There's two different properties of ownership, and they've collectively applied for a transaction. It's not a consortium, there's two different property owners who are developing that piece of property.
Can you name them?
Okay.
No? Did you know their names?
I do not know the major owner of Harding. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that's a matter of public record. We get those answers. We understand your concerns and questions, and we'll take them down. And we're certainly here at the end of the meeting if you have further comments. I'm now going to open the presentation to questions from council.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have maybe around 3 questions. One is, my first questions are, about the high and third intersection improvements. And I noticed in the budget there are 2 aspects, listed for this improvement. One is the actual capital costs, and the other is acquisition costs for lands. And I'm wondering, in light of your comments, Your Worship, concerning just because the money's in your budget doesn't mean this project's approved, what in fact would be spent in 2019 towards this intersection improvement of the $3 million in the budget?
Your question is if it's been approved? Or
No, my
absolute
question
approval?
is, what amount is anticipated to be spent in 2019 towards this project in the budget?
Are you assuming, because, well, Ryan might answer the question, but there's some assumption in there.
Through your worship, the one component, property acquisition, that was initiated 2 years ago. Parts of the expropriation have already occurred. We're currently in negotiation stage in terms of cost. And so that component, depending on what we resolve in terms of cost, will be spent in 2019. The capital works or construction, as I said, is related to the development. It's a development that has pushed this forward ahead of our schedule, and as to timing, whether that expenditure will be spent in 2019 is dependent on their schedule and then moving forward. Currently, they're working through their approval process for approvals and have some issues with drainage that they're working through with the conservation authority. So I'm not able to accurately predict whether all of it will be spent or if it'll even proceed, because we are totally dependent on the developer and they're moving forward. They're
Okay, thank you, and through you, your worship, just to clarify, so that depending on the timing of the developers on that project, there could be construction happening this year if this was approved in the budget?
That's correct.
And then my two other questions have nothing to do with Third and High. Okay, one is, if you can believe it, trees have become my favorite pastime for some reason. I noticed in the report, it says that the emerald ash borer will begin to have significant impact on town trees. The town's tree removal program will need to be increased. I'm just wondering what the nature of that problem is. And then my more important question is, do we have a program for replacement of trees? Through you.
So the emerald ash borer is a bug that has invaded this area, and it has already started attacking a certain number of the ash trees. We took down a number last year, but there is still a lot of live trees still there, and it's anticipated that they will kill those trees, and we'll have to remove those trees. There's nothing we can do to prevent that. There is a program where you can put insecticide in the tree, and through Parks and Rec, they have a program where they have identified a number of significant ash trees that they are trying to protect, but that's through Parks and Rec. In terms of replacement, there is a replacement program, but that is through the Parks and Rec, through green space to do the replacement.
Okay, so that's being taken care of as far as you know?
Yes.
And my last question through you, your worship, is I noticed we have an application before council right now where the property isn't big enough because it wants to go ahead of the rest of the neighborhood for stormwater ponds, so they're proposing an oil grit separator with underground tanks. And I'm just wondering if you can tell us what the difference in maintenance costs are generally for our community in looking after these underground tanks as opposed to a stormwater pond.
Through your worship, maintenance of those tanks, it depends on the size of them. The pond depends on the size of them, the design of the pond. So it really isn't it's an apples and oranges issue. As far as the ones we own, we inspect them every year, and if necessary, they're flushed out. The cost for inspection and flushing,
The cost, we have to inspect the OGS units yearly, that's a couple $100. We have to inspect the ponds yearly, that's after that, a couple of days. To clean out the oil for separators, depending on the location, but maybe once every 7 years, 5 years, and that would be maybe $2,000. The cost of cleaning out the pond is anywhere from 10 to 20 years. They say 10 years specifications, but we're usually getting 20 out of the ones that we have. Clean out a pond is anywhere from $80,000 to $300,000. Probably average is $250,000.
Thank you, that's my question.
Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Director McDonald, thank you for a succinct presentation. I'm going to bring up a subject you're very familiar with, and first and foremost, I want to say I'm delighted to see it on your recommendation. I think it's in very good company with some of the other presentations we've seen here with regard to 3rd Street. But for the benefit of my fellow councillors, I would like to highlight it is Director's Priority number 8, the Huron-Ontario Crosswalk. The trail crossing at the Hamilton Drain in Street Warms a crosswalk. During the election, I was invited out by some local families from Pretty River Estates to watch the children attempt to cross this area during the school day, and it was almost impossible to watch without wanting to intervene. I've been requested from a resident to share the comments. We can see from the young families here today, this is a very challenging time for working families to come out and express their thoughts. It says this crossing area is a liability when it comes to kids going to and from school. I believe it borders on negligence. I will not apologize for using strong language in this situation because I do not want to complain about a situation that needs a solution and have not tried to make a point clearly with emphasis it needs.
person says, thank you for your time. So to emphasize the significance and importance of this from a pedestrian safety issue, and then to please ask what the timeline on this project would be if approved.
Absolutely, Mayor. There's about a month's worth of education to the public regarding this. Is the first crosswalk in this area that I know of. This type of crosswalk, it's a new type of crosswalk that's allowed under the Highway Traffic Act. We would like to have a public education campaign to alert people how to use it, who has it right away. So that'll take about a month. We're in the design period right now. We'll have to go to tender. So I would like to construction to begin realistically July.
I have a follow-up question for your worship. So that education component being incredibly important, how would that tie in with the school year then? When would we begin that education campaign?
My thought was over the summer. We don't have all the details worked out quite yet, but that we've asked other municipalities how they've done it, and I think we can work with the schools. I think that is important because a lot of those people are crossing to go to St. Mary's and CCI, and I think we need to talk to the schools and how we can do that. I don't think that's very difficult and maybe a good idea.
Oh yeah, it'll be very, very well received, and so much support will be given. Thank you so much. Through you, your worship, to Director McDonald. Can you explain to me how it is that the 2nd Street sidewalk did not get done in the previous year's budget and has been carried over to this year?
Through your worship, there was a couple of other projects going on at the same time. The county was putting up their housing across the street, as well as the town is working on developing that park. And so there's a lot of moving, a lot of equipment moving in that area. And we also had an issue with one of the utilities and utility poles that had to be relocated. So there was a number of factors that we had to take a back seat and let that work get completed, and then we can follow up this year.
So those, through you, your worship, that sidewalk on the north side of 2nd Street is going to begin at Spruce and go all the way across to High.
Through your worship, that's correct.
How did it get decided that a sidewalk was required from Spruce to High on the north side of 2nd Street?
I think the parks on that side and the county development will also be putting a sidewalk in on their side across their frontage. The has less of an impact on homes. The stretch between Spruce and
Elm.
There's homes with an open ditch, several homes, very difficult construction-wise to put a sidewalk in the ditch. So by default, we put it on the park side, less disruption to homeowners. County is already doing a portion there, so that's kind of the logic behind its location.
Through your worship, where I'm going with this line of questioning is that we've got a group of people here who are very concerned about safety on 3rd Street, and which also only has sidewalks on the south side between Spruce and High, and for several blocks, actually Cedar to High, there's only a sidewalk on the south side. Has there been some discussion regarding putting sidewalks in on the north side of 3rd Street from Cedar to High as a way of mollifying some of the concerns of parents and families on 3rd Street and kids walking to Mountain View School?
It's certainly within our, through the mayor, it's certainly within our plans. That particular section of the road needs to be rebuilt, and we would put the sidewalk in at the same time as we do the construction. Unfortunately, that's not for a number of years. It's still within our 10-year capital program, but it's in the latter part of our 10-year capital program.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Doherty.
Thank you very much, through you to Director McDonald, there is budgeted funds this year for a transportation study. I saw that in the budget. Would a transportation study address some of the functionality of 3rd Street and some of the concerns of the residents on 3rd Street and perhaps incorporate it when it comes up with recommendations going forward?
Through your worship, the transportation study is updating our previous 2012 study, and it'll look at development applications, growth around the area, identify intersections where previous improvement has been identified, traffic signals, lane configurations, but it's not a study that would look specifically at 3rd Street and the issues that were raised today. That's not the intent of that study.
I'll just make the comment that I realize that we make a lot of our decisions relative to road design according to provincial standards and warrants, and yet I have seen so many examples of ways in which we can address traffic and the flow of traffic and the speed of traffic with traffic calming measures. I think someone in the audience spoke about that this afternoon, such as bike lanes, such as bump outs, such as even the addition of trees, which tend to have traffic calming properties. And I hope as we move forward that we can embrace some of these alternate technologies, I'm going to say. There's many examples of learning that comes out of other municipalities larger than ours. Ottawa is one that comes to mind right off the bat. There are many also in the US where they've come up with some very creative solutions to road design. And this is just for the sake of putting it on the record, I hope that we can start looking at some of these alternatives when our provincial standards don't quite meet up with our residents' standards. And then that's my comments.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Brad.
Just on that, I totally agree. I think one of our biggest challenges is we don't have a traffic calming policy. When we move forward with a traffic calming policy, we then have to look at costs. It's certainly not part of our budget right now, but there are some easy ways of dealing with traffic calming, but there are also very expensive ways, and finding a balance is a challenge, and finding a consistency or a program where how and where you want to apply that. Develop rules around what necessitates a traffic calming, what particular road you implement it, and you want to implement it on every street, or are there priority streets that you want to implement it on. So it's something that definitely we have been looking into in terms of other municipalities. However, it is potentially a significant budget issue that it will have to have council's consideration.
Then we look to the clerk and ask that the traffic calming policy be added to our list for items to address at the end of the discussions today.
Just one item that I forgot. Councillor Hamlin was inquiring about a number of trees removed versus trees planted, and I had reason to do that research last year, and I can tell you that we planted substantially more trees than what we took out.
That's why more questions.
Thank you, through you, perhaps to Bella first. You made comment to the sidewalks, and so I had made that request the other day, and I appreciate the fact that we're compressed for time. And so if we could, with the pleasure of council, we could park it for another day, but I would like to have maybe a broader conversation as how this community has sort of evolved over time. And I recognize that a lot of it predates everyone collectively, with the odd exception in this room. But not to get too far on a soapbox, and this is not directed at staff by any means. In fact, if anything, it's a shot at the council that I was previously a member of. And that is that you have frustrations that are conveyed by the members of the public as it relates to traffic calming, community safety, etc. And I'm conveying this to you, and that is that I went through a period of extreme frustration where we dropped in a recreational facility on a year-round basis. And when questions were asked about how the impact of a year-round facility within a multi-use park would impact things like traffic, livability within the community, etc., I might as well have been standing on a bridge in some grounds and asked myself to jump, because the looks back were, it was frustrating, to say the least. And so the only reason I mention it is that to provide some context, in the sense that I think there's some criticism being leveled at staff, not necessarily today, but the comments are always like, well, how do we do this, or why do we do this, etc. As you've mentioned, it's a lot of it is maybe trickled down through provincial policy, etc., and we're mandated, our hands are tied, etc. And so to come back to my comment about the sidewalks, I'd really like an opportunity to, as a council, to have an educational workshop where we are given sort of, the nuts and bolts in terms of how policies are arrived at, derived, what we can do as an administrative body to maybe put forward suggestions on behalf of our residents to make real impact, a real concrete decision-making policies moving forward that will in fact actually have long-lasting changes. Because as somebody who's now sat on 2 councils, and I'm careful when I say this, but I used it once prior for another issue, and there's a sense of Groundhog Day. And I think that there's a real opportunity, an educational opportunity. So thank you for speaking sort of at the 30,000 level today about the sidewalks. And if we could, I'd really like to come back and have a much more broader conversation. If we could, get your input, and then allow us the opportunity moving forward as to what we can do as a council in the next 4 years. I do have one specific question. I'd asked this a number of years ago, and I don't know if this can be considered. Throughout the community, and it's more maybe from an engineering, but also from a planning standpoint, the community is, and it's not unique to Collingwood, is littered with blind spots. And you mentioned summer students, Mr. McDonald, in your presentation. Is there ability to either piggyback or use, either through your department or the planning department, or both, student resources to start and actually map blind spots within the community so that we can address some of these issues on a go-forward basis?
Through the mayor, are you referring to trees, buildings, obstructing views around corners, sightlines around corners?
Yes, and we hear a lot about, we had an active transportation pyramid at some point where, the top level was the pedestrian and the vehicle was at the bottom level. And in fairness to the pedestrian, the cyclist, and everybody else in between, and the vehicle, there are oftentimes, we've all faced this, where you come to an intersection, I'm speaking as a driver, where I'm literally, the nose of my vehicle is in the intersection because I cannot see right or left. And in fairness to that pedestrian, to that cyclist, I'm impeding on their progress simply because I can't see. And it'd be nice to start to catalog these so that in a planning manner in an engineering manner, when we're looking at particular areas, we've already identified, this goes back to maybe the commenting of GIS, we've identified these as blind spot areas, and when there's an opportunity to improve an area, that data is already collected.
Your worship, we certainly can look at that as a possibility. Maybe we can have a discussion offline in terms of more of the details of what you're thinking of, because we do some of that stuff now, but if there's specific locations that we can have that discussion offline.
I forgot to ask this one when I was talking earlier. One of the projects that you have in place is upgrades to the 10th line this year and upgrades to Mountain Road. Will either or both of those engineering projects include bicycle lanes?
Through your worship, yes, they both include bicycle lanes, and the project request for this year is for design. The environmental assessment is working through, and they do include bike lanes and trails on Mountain Road as well.
To the mayor, I'd like to clarify, so Mountain Road construction will be phased, so it'll begin as a 3-lane cross-section with paved shoulders, and then there'll be a trail off-road. There'll be no bike lanes at the start, there'll be paved shoulders in the trail. Then, once there's a significant amount of growth and the volumes in the first will increase to 5 lanes, we'll curb it, and then we'll bike lanes.
The bike lanes are right against the curb.
Right against the curb, yeah. So in the interim, not technically bike lanes, paved shoulders, and a 3-meter wide trail off the road.
And through you, your worship, what kind of timeline are you talking about on that sort of thing?
To the mayor, it's very difficult to say because we're trying to time it with the development that's happening in the area. We don't want to build a new road and then have to put in a new pipe to service that development. So I think that's more the case for 10th Line. It's not the case for Mountain Road, so a lot of it's going to be dependent on when the development occurs, and that's dependent on the market, and I can't give that answer. I think Mountain Road is a little more imperative, just because of the condition of the road and the bridge crossing. So if I had to hazard a guess, it's not going to happen next year, but I'd say 1 to 3 years after that.
Thank you.
Mr. Ham.
Yes, I would just like to ask that the clerk, I know she's making a list of items for us to specifically discuss. So the item I would like to have added then is the deferral, the debate around the deferral of the $3 million in the budget attributable to the High and Third Street intersection improvements. I have seen, in support of this, I just want to mention, I have seen maps, your worship, that are not in wide circulation, that basically show the potential for Third Street to be extended to the west through this new development that our director's been speaking of this afternoon to 10th Line, and picking up the traffic then that might be coming from the new subdivisions that we see many of being built, hoping to be built, I would say, on 10th Line. So the potential for the impact on Third, obviously, is a lot of traffic coming from 10th Line. The traffic that will be coming along from Mountain Road, and I did have an opportunity to read the traffic report for this retail development, and it's suggesting that this bypass down that'll come out at Third Light will take 1/3 of the traffic coming from the mountain, off of Mountain Road, and direct it to our neighborhood. And I mention this in particular because in light of the fact that this road, Third, has been shown as a collector road since the 1970s, according to our planning director. And it's my recollection that the 1970s was the beginning of planning in Ontario, and I hazard a guess there wasn't even a public process for people to put their 2 cents worth in on how roads should be designated at that time. I think that I'm hoping the discussion around this council table is whether we will want to step forward at this time to protect our neighborhoods. And whereas even 20 years ago, I would again hazard a guess that our downtown areas were not the vibrant place that we see today, with young families moving in, with significant investments being made by people for their homes and to have their families have a good life there. And I know this will be a big step forward for us to take this into a discussion as to whether to defer these spendings amounts while we consider what the future of our town looks like. But I think this is a big issue for us. I recognize what the Director of Engineering and Public Works has said today. We've given draft approval to some retail lands on the west side of High Street. I am familiar that the Planning Act allows municipalities to change draft conditions if there are good reasons to do so. There may be opportunities if we were to focus on what alternatives could be as to that road coming out at 3rd and High. And I raise it not in the context of it being any expert in traffic, but just a solution I'll just throw out there. If instead of the lights, the road coming out at the lights at High and 3rd, it came out at the existing lights on High Street, which is between two cross streets. It's between 2nd and 3rd Street, so no local street, as they're all functioning right now as local streets, would get the full impact of that road, of all that traffic being diverted from being diverted from Mountain Street, and in the future being, brought over from 10th. So I think there could be some creative ways to deal with this traffic, and I think that this will be something that we should look at in the very near future. And so, as I say, I'd like that to be put on the list for discussion. Thank you.
I'll look to the clerk, but this is a budget meeting, so I think the deferral of an item can certainly be put on the table at any point. What we are collecting, I think, is other initiatives that we want to carry forward. So certainly, Councillor Hamlin, you're entitled at any point to put the deferral on the table, but I'll look to the clerk to go on that.
Through your worship, Champs Council, right now, I think staff are recommending looking at addressing all the items for the Collingwood Council at the Collingwood SIC meeting next Thursday. But it's at the will of council.
Right, and I guess the point is that we're gathering information now, but because this is a budget item in the budget meeting, the request for deferral can be made at any point.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments around the table? Questions? Council? And we'll move on to our next department, which would that be? Thank you, Brian, John, Peggy, and Dave. Sorry, get ahead of myself. Peggy and Dave, you guys you're up.
Unfortunately, I'm not done yet. I'm going to try and move these other two quickly. First, I'd like to bring Peggy up.
I'll move through the accomplishments. There's two that I would like to point out. Jessica, you moved to the slide about the transient and mass deployment. And I just, we haven't had an opportunity to speak to committee or council about this project. I would just like to point out that after a few years of being on the water budget, we did get this project off the ground in 2018. And we have started our mass deployment of transmitters, which is the device that goes over top of the black button and remotely reads water meters. So this will really enhance our customer service within the water department. Right now, the meters are read once a month, so this will allow us to have more timely notification of running water, so running toilets, pipes, and give us the ability to talk with customers about that. The second item, I just wanted to mention that we did hire, go to the next slide, please, Jessica, a project engineer, and so this position is working for both the water and wastewater departments, and is a key role and a key position that will help us advance the projects that we do have on our budget in a timely manner and help us really mitigate our risks associated with procurement and construction of our big projects, because we do have some large projects coming down. So moving on to the objectives of our 2019 budget and some of the projects that we will be working on. Just to get the slides working. So the next slide, please. Okay. So we've got the Carmichael Reservoir upgrades, which is our West End Reservoir. This is some asset management, part asset management, and part we're noticing that we need to make some adjustments to just the way we operate our distribution system on the West End with a large increase of development on the West End. So this project will be looking at that, and we're doing engineering, and we had to start any construction this year, and but construction will partly carry over into 2020. The next project is the Stewart Road Reservoir, and this is a development-driven project. It's a DC project. We don't have adequate reserves in the water DCs, and so the developers, we did get progress in signing a front-ending agreement with 2 of the developers, and we're waiting to see if we can see some movement from them on their steps so that we can move forward with this project in 2019, but it will be dependent on them. At the water treatment plant, you are aware that we're at the point that we need to look at an expansion, a significant expansion to our water treatment plant. So in 2019, the budget has allocated the commencement of a class environmental assessment, and this will be an amendment to the Class A that was already done at the plant in 2004. And so we're just going to revisit the preferred solution there, identify if that is still our preferred solution today. And once we complete the Class A in future years, we will be able to move forward with design and construction. Also, within the budget, so on that project, maybe keep going. And the next one. Also at the water treatment plant, we're continuing with our server and control systems upgrade with IT. So that we're making sure that our systems are secure and our risks are limited there. In conjunction with Public Works at Campbell Street, we're replacing an undersized water main, and also the same with this project on Napier Street North. The water main is still in good condition there, so we're just looking at hydrant replacement and including an additional hydrant to improve service in that area. For new water mains, we're contributing to the oversizing of a water main in the Summit View subdivision, which will help us service future growth on the West End in the future. And also, because there is work happening in that area of High Street and Finley, we're looking to construct a connecting water main from Finley to Campbell Street, and this will help us our distribution within Pressure Zone 2, and will allow us to move some residents who are served in our Pressure Zone 1 and are near the border. Some of those would be better served if they were in Pressure Zone 2, and so this new water main would allow us to do that. Some other projects that we're continue to work with the New Tecumseh Water Supply Agreement, which is up for renewal next year, or expires next year. Water service replacement that we talked about, and valve replacement. So these are set budgets that we have annual set budgets that we have as capital replacements, and also as Lindsay mentioned, we're taking a closer look at our valve replacement program and looking at a new program where we're going to operate and maintain our valves, all the valves in the town over a 5-year term, and so we expect when we do this, we're going to find that some valves are inoperable, so we are looking to increase that budget from previous years. Okay, I can move, and yeah, I did touch on the vehicles there, so we've got a couple of carryover vehicles from 2018 and vehicles for 2019. So that's the highlights of the water budget and accomplishments are there any questions on water?
Before I open it up to council, I'll look to the audience if there is anyone that would like to comment on the water budget. Seeing none, I'll look to council. Any council, any questions for Peggy? Councilor Brown.
Through you, Your Worship, I'm looking at your revenues, and for 2017, these are fees were $6,614,000. 2018, $6,670,000. Of the ballpark off the top of your head, any of those phrases, how much of that came from New Tecumseh and the water that we sell them?
Through Your Worship, we do have a separate line item. We do separate the revenue that we will get from New Tecumseh and from Townsville Mountains. Marjorie, do you have that in front of you?
I believe Mike can
Through Your Worship, the 2019 base budget amount is 1.2 million.
1.2 million revenue from New Tecumseh.
So what's the 2018?
In 2018, our estimate is 1.45.
1.45 for 2018.
And so that was just the water that we sold them. That is none of the other agreements, like they're not putting anything into our reserves for future rebuild or any of that stuff. That's the sum total of all the money that New Tecumseh gave us for water.
Through Your Worship, there was an asset replacement of the filters, the membranes, it's a complete train, and they paid a portion share. I don't have those numbers on hand, but I think it was pretty close to 45–55%, so based on flows.
And one more, sorry. 1.45 million was for how many cubic meters of water on average per day? Because I know the deal that I'm reading about is 6,000. One more. How much? What was the average that they paid us for that water? Or how much water they used?
Through Your Worship, our agreement with the town of New Tecumseh is that they must take or pay for 9,500 cubic meters a day. They generally take just slightly less than that, but I would say definitely on average they're taking 8,500 to 9,500 every day.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Seeing none, then well, who's next?
I'm going to speak to wastewater.
Wastewater, okay.
Okay, again, moving through the accomplishments, I would just like to highlight the UV disinfection replacement, system replacement. That's the next slide, please, Jessica. So this was as a project, very important project that we did a unique procurement. We did a design, build, install, and this allowed us to move forward with this project in a very efficient manner. This is protecting our ability to disinfect our final effluent. It is a key compliance issue because we were struggling, we are still struggling with our aged equipment, and so this project is near completion, and I just wanted to mention that. It's key. Thank you, Jessica. If you could just move through to the maps, please, and I'll just speak to the 2019 projects. So the first one we've identified is at the wastewater treatment plant. There's a number of the structures where the brick facade needs repair. So this year we're moving forward with engineering design through the engineering roster to come up with the design specs and the tender documents for that work, and then it will give us the ability to phase the actual construction of the work as our budget allows over the next few years. The next project is a generator replacement at the wastewater treatment plant. This is also a very key piece of infrastructure at the plant. In 2017, we had an issue with our current generator and required major repair, and we paid a significant amount of money to rent a generator to have as emergency backup power. So this really highlighted for us the need to move forward with replacement of our unit. So this year, we're currently in the engineering, and we expect to tender this and have a new generator installed by the end of 2019. The next slide, please. Another big project is the Black Ash Creek Sewage Pump Station. So this station needs asphalt replacement and it also requires a capacity upgrade. In 2018, we completed Class EA, and the preferred identified solution was full replacement of the pump station at the same site. So we're moving forward with we've completed the engineering and we have actually tendered the project. We had budgeted 3.4, but the tender has come in at 3.62. So it is one item we wanted to highlight for you. Moving forward with a full replacement station will allow us to keep the existing station in operation while we build. And otherwise, we would have had to have a bypass of the station for probably 3 months to do the upgrades in the existing structure. But this station is well beyond its lifespan, and much of the equipment is no longer meeting inside is meeting regulations. So we're pleased that this project is moving forward. Next slide, please. We have also some other items are vehicle purchase, and then just some inflow and infiltration investigation, which will be completed through the master servicing plan at the wastewater station. Next slide, please. And some of the pressures we just noted are staffing related. We'd like to elevate one operator into a lead hand position, so we can kind of better define the roles of a lead hand for operations, and the manager can concentrate on operations and look at some system operational efficiencies at the plant. And asset management, previously under the wastewater budget, we did not have recurring annual budgets for asphalt replacement at the wastewater plant or the sewage pump station. So we have added that, this year and moving forward in subsequent years. And that's all, I think.
All right, any comments from the public on the wastewater budget? Seeing none, I'll turn to council. Council, any questions, comments? I think you nailed it, Peggy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
Last one, I promise. And very quickly go through fleet facilities.
Good mayor and council, I can be fairly efficient. As you're aware, we fulfill a corporate role, although we're embedded within the engineering department. And so what we do is we assist with projects and maintenance concerns across the organization for any and all departments. So in the list of accomplishments, you'll see some corporate items like the master accommodation plan, and the green terminal engineering assessment, but also individual projects like upgrading the HVAC system at the museum, construction management of the transit terminal, and so on. There's a number of carryover projects, some of them in progress, like the town hall brick restoration, the town hall emergency generator, several HVAC projects, and currently in progress, there are vehicle RFQs in progress for a garbage truck, a sewer crusher, and hydrovac truck, a snow plow, sidewalk plow, and another 6x3. Again, in the list here, all of these projects that you see exist in someone else's capital. We don't have our own capital budget requests. We spend everybody else's money. And in terms of fleet, you can see on the left column there that there's fleet vehicles
objectives. Big focus this year is going to be facility condition assessments across all departments. Implementation of work tech to be able to build the asset management plan. Also this year is the 5-year update of the town's energy conservation and demand management plan, which is due in July. And that's for a question.
Dave, any questions or comments from the gallery on the presentation on fleet, whatever it is? Sorry, I lost the other half. Matthew, come on up, 5 minutes on the budget. Just as a heads up, council, at 4:15, we will have reached our maximum allowable for the meeting unless we get 2/3 majority from council wishing to continue. And we'll address that after we hear from the.
Also, sorry to interrupt just before Matthew begins. When I was speaking to some of our residents a few minutes ago, there was one lady who thought you didn't want to hear any more from her because of time constraints. So I thought perhaps if we could specifically allow her to speak before we do it.
Sure, absolutely. Matthew, be quick.
Right, here's a suggestion in regards to functioning of equipment. You have to consider how we use equipment. It's a big part of technology, how we use it, how we turn it off, put it away, how we keep it clean, and safety around technology, such as turning your phone off while you're driving. I recommend the fleet maybe install some sort of a beeping system on the snowplows. Well, they do have them when they reverse. It's a really dangerous job, and I've watched the plows, they do a great job. For the small plows, just wondering if we could install like something yellow, something more yellow, like the orange kind of blends in after a while and it just kind of doesn't pop out, like something yellow on the vehicle. They do like a slight noise when it's going. That might be a bit much though. But anyways, they do a great job, but that's not something to consider, because you know, these guys, I'll tell you, whipping around first, construction vehicles, it's a mess. It's a mess. It's dangerous. Very dangerous actually. People don't realize how dangerous big vehicles are. Very, very dangerous. Install some yellow signage or something. That would be really good.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Safety in there somewhere.
An opportunity for sort of the individual who felt I wasn't allowed. I was not trying to include anyone from speaking, so if I can come forward now, that'd be great.
Sorry if I add the third street, more comments to the third
That's
street
okay.
issue.
If I could just get your name and address, please.
My name is Marian Stampley and I live on 3rd and Beach.
Good, thank you.
But aside from being a resident, I'm also a professor at the University of Guelph and I teach planning. And one of the mantras we give our students is to never make decisions for community development based on data, be this assessment data or plans that are older than 5 years. And so considering that, it seems a little scary to think that really important decisions for our community are being made from data that is quite far back. And so this is one comment, and the other is Collingwood is a tourism destination. And I think we should also try to incorporate in our future planning how we represent ourselves as a community. Do we want to be a community that, for example, promotes active transportation, community quality? Do we want to promote cycling? Or do we want to promote a place that is purely based on economic gains? And if we only allow contractors and big developers to tell us where we are going, we are losing all the beautiful things that make us our community. And so I think this is also part of the decision we should make as you're deciding on the budget that goes into the various projects, what are we gonna be, what do we wanna present ourselves to be in the future? So that's all I would like to add.
I appreciate that. Please give us your name and address, Marion, so that you're on the
I'm
list.
already on.
You're already listed, okay, thank you. All right, so, council, we're at 4:05. Our timeline expires 4:15. We need a motion to extend, and it has to be passed by 2/3. Is that right, sir? 2/3. So we have a motion to extend. Councilor Doherty, second by Councilor Berman. Questions or comments before I call the vote? We need to extend for a specific time. We go on 1 hour, so this will take us to 5. So all in favor? And that is unanimous. We're going now. Now we're heading for 5:15, and I'm going to call Deputy Chief come up and give us a fire.
Your worship, I had a quick question, please, for Dave. With respect to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dave? Dave, leave? No, Dave's still here. All right, come on forward, Dave. We have a question from Councilor Cole.
Thank you so much, through your worship, Dave. I'm not sure if it's for you, but I believe I saw a line item of about 135,000 for the terminal maintenance scheduled for this year. Is that correct? And can you talk a little bit about what that maintenance would include?
Yeah, without having a list specifically, but it has to do with restricting access to various points in the grade elevator, improving all arrest systems that exist but aren't necessarily certified.
Can you pause there on that fall arrest system? The fall arrest system is for whom?
It would be for anyone who goes there that could be arrested.
Are you talking about on the rooftop?
Yes. And so it could be for the communication carriers, or it could be for staff, or it could be for other contractors.
Okay, because it just sounds, that had come up before and that had just, I suppose I use the word surprised me because I would normally expect the tenants on top, those wireless carriers, to provide their own fall arrest system or safety procedures, or parapet wall or whatever they need, rather than us absorbing that cost.
Through your worship, and they have, for the most part,
Okay.
in the locations where they have their equipment.
Okay.
There's deficiencies in their fall arrest equipment, mostly from the point of documentation. They haven't posted what the limits of the fall arrest equipment are.
Dave, can I just make sure you speak into the mic so people are watching live stream?
Does that answer that?
Yeah, I suppose, and we'll leave it hang as a comment. I find it curious in that we would have to potentially step in and make up for their deficiency, but that's, not necessarily for us to address here.
It's more a matter of enforcing that they do what they need.
Okay.
The other item on the list is stair, protection of stairs and guards. As you can imagine, in an older industrial facility, there isn't things like kick plates along the bottom of guardrails in all locations and stuff like that. And so it's a matter of addressing all those items. The other big item is window restraints, where there could be the potential for windows to fail and fall, most probably in. But so this would be reinforcement to ensure that that can happen.
Okay, very good, thank you. Those are anticipated for this year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor, any other questions? No? All right. Chief.
I wasn't feeling love, but Council, because of time, I will definitely cut it down, so I spoke a lot on Monday anyway. Anyway, I'll just start with, for a new training officer position. I, of course, will oversee all development, delivery of training programs to the department. It's come about because of this mandatory certification I spoke about on Monday. majority were in the hub of Collingwood, so you're kind of looking at High Street, First Street, Campbell Street, and out to the Parkway. What I'm going to do from now on is kind of monitor our calls on the outskirts and see if the call volume's going up with the growth of the town, and see how our response time is for that. Just some non-incident activities for last year. I mentioned the other day we did close to 1,400 alarm for life homes. We installed and loaded 108 CO smoke alarms. We did 269 fundraising and public education tours and station tours, school visits, and inspections. We also did 89 pre-planned building audits. For prevention, we did 436 inspections, general complaints, and requests, 87 education, fire drills, and different training exercises. And they also did 71 consultations, fire time reviews, and court appearances. Now, I talked about 18 the other day, so I think we could go on to the next slide. And our objectives, of course, mandatory certification, we're hoping to keep up with that. Training officer, we're hoping to keep up with our other technical skills that are beyond the certification. Our growth, response times, the number of new homes I spoke about a minute ago with the mapping, we're going to monitor that and see how that goes. We're looking for compliance for emergency management, our quality care program compliance, our alarm for life and pre-planning application software that Lindsay was talking about, and of course our customer service enhancement of the online burner permits. So for 19, for unavoidable increases, we actually have a decrease in benefits of 60,000. Our 911 dispatch and our emergency planning, I spoke about before, it's not really an increase, it's just two new lines that we got on our budget. Insurance is up 825, and our salaries allocated, which is the admin side, that would be 72,000. And of course, our volunteer firefighters is 4,838. That's due to probably more training last year. We had when we were doing comp ops, a lot of different certifications to try to lead them into this year when this provincial legislation comes to us. All right. So I spoke again on Monday about this, but our salaries and benefits are an overall decrease, including the training officer, of $43,877. We got two new lines that was 19,200, but still, even with those two new lines, with the training officer, with wages and benefit increase, we're still down $24,327. And for capital, we're looking to replace the 2004 tanker. Of course, depending on the dollar and the tariffs, we're looking at about $650,000 of trade-in with the old tanker, and we also have a foam trailer that we could probably sell and get approximately $25,000 for. And the other thing we're looking to purchase is new hydraulic extrication tools. There's 3 tools to that, and 1 high pressure lifting bag of a cost of $65,000. It says 10 to 5 at that time. And that is basically the end of my presentation. Short and sweet.
Just like it was last time. Yes.
I just talked about it.
Hopefully we don't have to be extricated. Any comments from the gallery on Deputy Chief's presentation? Seeing none, then I'll ask council. Any questions? Councilor Dory.
Thank you, Worship, and through you to the Deputy Chief. The expense recoveries line, that would incorporate services like the fire mark service. So I'm not seeing a revenue line for 2018 or a forecast for 2019.
I just talked to our new assistant, she had just put it through at this time. So she just actually, when I left this morning, she was working on it. So it will be in the next couple of years. She did tell me it's way up from the previous year.
So that will offset some of these budget items?
That's where that would go, Marty, where Mark, where is that?
Great, thank you.
I don't know, does anybody want to speak about fire mark at all, or?
Very good. Good. Thank you. And so, Councilor McLeod.
Through your worship to Deputy Chief Furman. One of those slides that said, I think the number is 878 fire and emergency response calls.
That's, that could be actual fires, or it could be fires or alarms, that type of thing. Rescues would entail
That was my question, is where do car crashes land in those statistics? They are in rescues?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else, council? Just a quick question, Dan, for the tanker truck, most of our area is sourced with water mains, but we still have a need for a tanker truck in our area.
What we're actually looking for is to go, I'll try to make this short and sweet. We're looking to get a truck that holds more people. The truck we previously had only holds 2. It has 2,000 liters of water. We're looking to go down to 1,000 liters. We find that most areas have hydrants at this time, and with our mutual aid system with the surrounding area. So what we're looking for, we need, the truck we have now does not have a fire pump. It has a trash pump in it. So we can't do interior firefighting with it. And so we need one that actually has an actual fire pump, but it still has a lot more water than our original truck does. And another problem we had, we just had a mutual aid troll the other day over the airport. That pump and that truck cannot push the water into most of the residents that are half a kilometer away. They got a new system of how we're doing it. It used to be they used to drop the water in the toilet tank and go. Now we hooked into a system. Now the trucks line up and we pump into it. Our truck does not have enough pressure to do it. So that's one of the reasons we're going to a bigger tank, but not as big as before, but one that has the pump capabilities and can carry more manpower.
Good, that's helpful, thank you. Okay. All right, well, you're done. Okay, thank you. Planning, Nancy.
Thank you, and I don't think I'll take very long. Let's see, we've got one somewhere. Don't walk away. That's it. Where's my?
All IT. You think we've got these notes?
Go behind you.
Is it a problem?
She's got a security list up on her.
There's really nothing secret about planning.
Yeah.
John, I've got my computer. Do you want me to pull it up on mine? Can you see it? There we go. Okay. All right. And thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. I won't take very long because I know it's been a long day so far. We'll just start with Jessica. And just if there's any, I brought this before, but if there are any further questions, because I know we were just very quickly introducing things the other day. Obviously, we've been very busy with applications in the last several years, and certainly that is, to be honest, that's where the majority of our staff time is going, is processing applications, because there are so many of them that we have to look after, but we are doing our best to try and do it in a timely manner and try and keep up with the activity. As I believe everyone knows, this year we were down a staff member for a portion of the year. We will have a staff member who will be returning to us on April 1st, and that will add to our complement by one person, and we are certainly looking forward to her return. Okay, next please, Jessica. Oh, there's just, if there's any questions about the map, I put the map in, but you can just keep going. Okay. What we are trying to do from a customer service perspective, and certainly what we're doing, and I'm not sure it's in our budget package, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to track all of our applications, when they arrive, how long it takes us to process them, and how, so it's some kind of measures that we hope shortly, at least probably by next year, we will be able to give council as to how efficient we are being, because I think that is one of the questions that we're being asked. You know, how good a job are we doing? How quickly are we managing to get things out the door? What we also, and one of the, it's not quite as simple as just us processing applications, because often what happens is that we will do our part, we will return it to the applicant and say, you have to give us a further submission, and sometimes we get a submission in a month, and sometimes we get the submission in 6 months. And those are timelines that frankly we have no impact on. So if a developer chooses for whatever reason to be slow in returning their information to us, it obviously affects our timelines. So what we're trying to do is work into our tracking, not just the time that town staff take to process the applications, but also we have to work in gaps when frankly we are waiting for other people to give us information. And that happens, and there's really very little that we can do that I know of about that. If a developer, for example, is not interested in moving his application ahead quickly, we basically have to wait for him to move on. Don't think I need to say any more about a couple of the projects that the department will be involved with this year. Refresh of the community-based strategic plan, begin review of the official plan. I think we've had lots of discussion about those. And I think that's all I'll say about planning. Moving on to building. And building is also, planning's busy on one end, 1 year, and then building's busy the next year is kind of what seems to happen. Building activity it wasn't quite as busy this year, in 2018, but in 2019, based on what the permits we already have received, we are expecting an incredibly busy year. So next, Jessica. This just shows, we put a chart showing the number of inspections, and they are up almost 40% over last year. That's pretty hard to sustain, to be honest. We are doing an awful lot more inspections. For example, in the month of January 2018, there were 190 inspections. In the month of January 2019, there were 375. That's a huge increase over year over year. So we'll see what happens, but I just want council to be aware that the building department is incredibly busy. And it looks like, based on what's coming in the door, they're going to be incredibly busy. Just next. Yeah, this just shows basically, we have 4 people in the building department. Greg is the CBO. He does the odd inspection, but let's be honest, that's not his prime job, is doing inspections. He is the manager of the department, and he's doing a lot of other things, but being out on the road inspecting. We have 2 absolutely full-time inspectors, and we have a deputy CBO who also does a certain number of inspections, and he also does other things like sign bylaw and heritage review, and so he has a number of other things he's looking after as well. In the average month, the 2.5 people doing 1,400 inspections, that's a lot for sure. Okay, priorities for, next one, priorities for 2019 in the building department. The e-permit system, the e-permit service, that's gone online, and they're certainly continuing to put more and more applications online. That seems to be rolling out pretty well. There's been integration with the water meter program. We now hand out water meters at the building department, so you don't have to go to a different building to get your water meter. They're also implementing a pre-screening program for permits. What we often find is that someone will show up and expect to get the building permit, and we look at it and say, well, you need an NBCA permit. So there's not a lot of point in you submitting your building permit if it's going to take you, and I'm sorry to say this about the NBCA, but it can take several months to get a permit from the NBCA. So there's not much point. What we're trying to do is we're going to try pre-screening the permits so that they're not submitted to us until they really need to be submitted to us. And certainly they're continuing to work on a number of customer service enhancements as well. And one of the things that they will be doing is always trying to have one person who can answer building questions, and often it's Greg or somebody like Greg, in the office, so that there's someone there at the front counter who actually is knowledgeable on zoning code, because we can't expect our administrative staff to try and answer technical questions on the building code. On our last slide, the priorities for 2019, I guess the end is, to be clear, there are mandated and legislated time frames in which we are supposed to be issuing building permits. It's not something that we made up, it's something that we are expected to comply with. When they are so busy, what we have found that we have to do is have a third party. We're hiring a consulting firm to review some of the building plans, particularly not in the everyday permits, but the larger permits. We've got a number of permits for such things as apartment buildings. Those are large, complicated plans. So we're going out to a third party to review and then for review services so that we can meet our time frames. And the cost for those, it's not a cost to the taxpayer, it's a cost to the applicant. So it is something that it's not affecting the general taxpayer when we have to do that. It's something that's coming out of the fees that the applicant is paying for their permits. So it's not being added to the tax bill, just for everybody's information. But there's no question there's going to be a lot of, if we get these, we've got 2 extra apartment buildings currently in right now. The Holiday Inn Hotel is coming in. There's another couple of buildings on Peel Street that are coming in. A lot of large buildings that the building department will be expected not only to review the drawings but inspect. We're not sure yet, where we may also have to do some contracting with a third party to do the inspections just to get them done. And I think I'll leave it at that. I just would be more than happy, Your Worship, to try and answer any questions, but that's kind of where we are right now in building.
Good. Thank you very much, Nancy. Before I put it to council, I will ask the audience if there's anyone that has a comment. Come on up, you got 5 minutes to talk about the budget.
Okay, this one bothers me. Yeah, I'm really impressed with the last council because they facilitated the Simcoe County bill of 2nd and High Street. And you, Mayor Saunderson, was part of that with the board meetings at the Simcoe County level. There may have been another councillor, but I remember you were on that board. In conjunction with Nancy's department, this is a big deal. And I think that 2nd in here, Ontario, High Street, it's going to be fantastic. And the use with the planning associated with the living in suites and single and shared and maybe up to 3 rooms, I don't know. But with the adult learning center, there's a life skills meeting room going on, which is going to be great for events and activities. Adult learning center. Oh yeah, social services, and that's just really awesome too. And so I have to say, like Nancy just pointed out, this third-party customer service opportunity allows for, when people are approaching the town and they have an idea, there's a facilitation. And then that facilitation can come to council and say, hey guys, we have a really nifty idea for a medium density, high density. And then the obvious concern is regarding, as the sheet says, tree loss. Councillor Doherty well said there, and Councillor Hamlin and associates, and the other thing being the fence. Getting fences in, for example, to maintain standard of development. But I do think we need to get behind this medium high density building, because that will help facilitate what people want. They want to be in a shared living environment, and it's a little less expensive for people with limited incomes or whatever is attracting them to come to Collingwood as well as an attraction. So let's keep promoting that. And this third party idea, great idea, because I think medium density, high density is something we need to feel comfortable with as a progressive town. So let's do that. That's a great idea, because I firmly believe, I think medium high density should be looked at with more support and you know, and connecting the investment and the interest of people coming here, and just connecting those properties that may be waiting to be a 4, 5, 6-story development, because I think that's what people want actually. So I just want to turn that over, and I think that's a great idea, this third-party facilitation. You get a little more expertise on the field, you know, with regards to town staff. So whatever that costs, honestly, that may be a wise investment.
Good. Thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you for so far so good. And the second and High Street building, we got to really cut the ribbon that day, because they've been working so hard in all the weather conditions. Just amazing. Just amazing. Anyways, I think I'm gonna head home here. So thanks, guys. Thank you for all that you're doing. Nancy, are you done?
Thank you, Mo. We're gonna have to go around the table now. So I will turn it over to council. Council, any questions for Nancy on her budget? Councilor.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. My question just is, I noticed there's a priority item for community improvement plan to support local business owners and facilities along the waterfront, and I guess this year we need a staff report on that. I'm just wondering what the nature of the community improvement plan would be for part of the waterfront is.
Thank you, and through the mayor to Councilor Hamlin. This was something that was identified in the community-based strategic plan. And I guess the previous council, frankly, I understand perfectly, one of the emphasis of the previous council was debt reduction, and funding community improvement is not necessarily cheap, so we could definitely put it at the top of the pile. But the theory of the community improvement plan was perhaps to help out the downtown core and the waterfront and the connections between the downtown core and the waterfront, because that was something that was identified as something that we should work on improving, is the connections between the downtown core and the waterfront. And if there is any possibilities of having community improvement to either work on the downtown or the waterfront, that was something that we were talking about in the community-based strategic plan, that we could look at in the strategic plan, that we could look at community improvement plan. But certainly to date, at least there has been no money set aside to fund that. And I don't believe there's any in this budget, but it is something that could come up as a staff report.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Hannon. I think that's a really important consideration. In my recommendation, the council would be to bring this back as part of the new revenue tools consideration. So we're actually looking at a suite of tools that would include the community improvement plan, potentially tax increment financing, accommodation tax, other tools. So we've got a bundle of potential revenue tools that we could use to kind of leverage both our economic interests as well as our public policy and environmental interests as well.
Any other questions for Nancy? Seeing none, thank you very much, Nancy.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's move to HR next. Thanks.
Good afternoon. I know this has been a long afternoon, so I will keep this fairly quick. Jessica, if you could go to the third slide. I'm not going to highlight the accomplishments of the budget pressures. We discussed that on Monday. So I'm just going to go to my third slide here, which is the key highlights for 2019. And you'll see those on page 62 of the budget package. So for 2019, Human Resources is looking to do a compensation review for both non-union staff and council remuneration. The last formal review was conducted in 2013, and there have been a lot of changes in the organization since that time. So it is best practice, and actually in our salary administration policy that council does pass, to periodically conduct a review for internal equity, external equity, and equity purposes. That would also actually tie in possibly to the organizational realignment that's being proposed to council. So any of those new positions, where people are going to be situated, all of that hopefully would be processed through that compensation review process as well. From a capital standpoint, we are requesting to go out to market to look for a new performance management system. The current system we have is an online system. Employees and supervisors across the organization are finding it very frustrating to use. We've had it about 5 years now, it wasn't implemented when we first obtained it, actually back in 2013, at the same time as the compensation review was conducted. We have been trying to work with it. We're just finding it's not user-friendly for staff. It's not customizable for departments. From an HR perspective, it's very cumbersome to administer. It's not giving us any reporting. The other thing I suspect is we are the only organization actually using it. So the supplier is really not interested in making any improvements to that. So we really do need to find something else. From a health and safety standpoint for 2019, we're putting a focus on incident investigations. And that's really to help determine root causes of incidents, help us determine what actions need to be taken to improve health and safety in our workplace. That will be a project that will be, from our health and safety coordinator perspective, she will also work with the multi-site health and safety committee, using year 3 of their mandate. And the other thing that from a health and safety perspective is the Ministry of Labour has a working on this initiative focused on public works activities, but really what they mean by public works is any outside activities. So year 1 of that project was this past year. Ministry of Labour is expecting municipalities to have a ergonomics program established. We're moving into year 2. Risk assessments will need to be done, but also the Ministry of Labour has indicated that 50% of municipalities will actually have a Ministry of Labour inspector come and check out their program. So, hey, 50-50 odds, for us, but it's been a good initiative, and actually the multi-site and a lot of other worker representatives have been involved in that process as well. That's it for me.
Right. This is just for the record. Any comments from the gallery on the HR presentation? Seeing that, I'm going to pass it to Council. Council, any questions from Melissa?
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you for your brief and succinct presentation. When you talked a little bit about the compensation review that will be undertaken, does any of that work include consideration of gender balance within the workplace at our town hall?
So from a gender balance perspective, I don't think it would. But in 2013, the process that was followed was basically to develop a gender-neutral system. So that system was established in 2013. We've been putting new positions through that same scoring system up until now. So that would certainly be one of the components of the project that we'd be moving forward with, is to make sure that everything is still evaluated on a gender-neutral system.
When you say that, I'm sort of thinking of symphonies where they do blind playing. Is that sort of where the players play behind a curtain so no one knows what gender they are? Is that what you mean?
Basically, what job evaluation system would look at is skills, responsibilities, workplace conditions, those kinds of things. So all of the gender bias is designed out of that system. So it's basically looking at the skills and responsibilities required for the duties to be performed, education background, those types of things, which should all be considered gender neutral.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought you were referring to hiring rather than compensation. In hiring, do you do something similar to take the gender out of things? And this may not be within the purview of our discussion today. I apologize.
Well, actually, I think it is, and I think it is an important question. So I'm going to address it directly because I think I have a responsibility to. Actually, it's interesting because I've had this discussion with the department departments where I think there isn't in my view, an obvious gender balance. So and I'm going to try and tackle this department by department, and the Deputy Fire Chief is here, and he can attest to the conversation I had with him and Chief Ross to look at our recruitment policy and to get some third-party and external advice to ensure that we have no inherent bias on the recruitment side, and that on the selection side, that we have no systemic issues that would prevent individuals from accessing the organization. So that is something that is top of mind, and the intention is to try and tackle this in the departments that there seem to be no obvious gender parity. I mean, I'm not sure we'll be able to achieve gender parity in every single department in the organization, but I think it certainly requires us to make an effort to try and ensure that our systems are not inherently biased to any particular gender. But I think it's an important consideration.
Thank you.
Not only gender issue, I think it also speaks to the issue of persons with disabilities, as well as racialized people, as well as persons from the Aboriginal community as well.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Martin?
Good Council. If you want to refer to tab 6, page 179, you'll find all the details of the 2019 budget there. If you want to go to the next slide. Really our key objective remains to ensure that Collingwood is an attractive place for companies to invest in. And we continue to focus on that over the last few years. What is exciting news and a key accomplishment for 2018 is actually being able to measure that. Are we having impact? That is, of course, the Collingwood business survey that went out. Over 100 companies completed it. It gave us a great snapshot of what our strengths are as well as our opportunities. So we rank good as a place to invest. And good news is that the indicator has been improving over the last 2 years. We're an excellent place to live, and we are a world-class place to visit and vacation. So that last one is a real important piece as we consider about how we actually become more overtly ready for investment attraction and go out there and attract not only employees but investors. Next slide, please. 2018 accomplishments, we went through that earlier this week. Next slide. Budget pressures remain as they were earlier this week. No news from the provincial government in terms of SBAC. And finally, in terms of taking a look at key highlights for 2019, these are, if you will, presented in a format that prioritizes a little bit based on Monday's discussion. As you'll note in the actual printed material, recommendations that I'm suggesting be a key focus. In terms of going out and really starting to more overtly talk about investment attraction, our focus on our tech cluster, celebrating that more, bringing them to the fore, actually going out there, having a website that includes profiles that makes it easy for potential employees to come in there. We have that now with the livemorenow.ca website with a specific page for Collingwood at livemorenow.ca/Collingwood. And just as a note, this is a full BC partnership effort. And that includes funding from Simcoe County for regional efforts. So we have carved out a specific Collingwood page there, profiling 15 companies. One of the $25,000 that we're asking for from council, incremental this year, is really to say, how do we really go out the second half and have an even louder voice about what we've got here in terms of tech companies, continue to promote it across Southern Ontario, nationally. And I think CO3 to me has been, I think, a breath of fresh air in terms of saying we're ready now. We've got a great story here. We just need to start talking about it outside the confines of Collingwood. And that's really what it is intended for, so that we can continue to maintain our baseline, but really start ramping up and increasing the scale of our voice, if you will. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. That was the elevator ride. So, anyone from the crowd want to comment on either of those presentations? Seeing none, council, any questions for Martin on the NPF? Council Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Simpson. Through you to Martin. Where does the youth center fit in? What column, and what's the dollar total for this past year and coming year?
Through you, Chair. Quick note on the budgets. This is a total budget for the overall business development center. So you see operating costs of the building, paying off debt on it, rent coming from the partners. So just a quick note on that. Of that total budget, about $200,000 is actually for active investment in initiatives. So very much sticks to the guideline that we heard earlier this morning that about 70% of the budget is just basically there that we need to continue supporting, with the remaining 30% being ones where, year to year we adjusted to make it work. So just wanted to make sure people have that context for this overall budget. The question with regards to Collingwood Youth Centre, we are recommending $25,000 this year for supporting the Collingwood Youth Centre as a place to help youth find jobs and discover their careers. And that would sit under the special projects budget, which is actually part of the occupancy budget. This is at $123,700.
Great. So is it safe to assume it was $25,000 in this budget? It was roughly that in 2018?
Through you, Mayor Saunderson. So it's actually been a decline scale. The town has maintained contribution of $25,000, but we've had Simcoe County come in and actually help over the last few years and top that up. If you'll notice, there's a decrease of $12,500 versus last year under other municipalities. That reflects the decreasing amount from Simcoe County. Unfortunately, we're down to zero from Simcoe County this year. So it's actually been a declining scale for Youth Center. Really make sure they're aware they need to also figure out how to find funding to be as self-sufficient as possible.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Mr. Doherty.
Thank you. And I think I have the answer through you to Mr. Ridlow. I think I have the answer to my first question, which was the increase in occupancy. So would that be the youth center, the 25,000?
Through you, Mayor Saunderson.
Under the 2019 service enhancements?
That $25,000 is actually for advancing our tech cluster promotion, if you will. So that's where, as I was talking about, how do we actually help promote tech companies that are in town? How do we help them seek employees? How do we make sure that Collingwood is not just a place that people think of as a nice tourism place, but actually becomes recognized as a tech center? So that is what that $25,000 is. The youth center budget is a new base budget over the last few years, and it's already embedded within the 2019 proposed budget of $23,700.
And then this may be more of a question through the mayor to perhaps to the treasurer. There's a line item here for debt servicing, which I don't see in other departments. Fair chunk of change.
Through you, Your Worship. The TD Canada Trust building was purchased in 2003, 2004, by a debenture at that point in time. So in terms of buildings, other than this building, which is municipal office and library, the department that will show the debenture debt is the BDC building, because we can attach it directly to those operating costs. We did have the debenture as well for the airport, so we can attach it to that. When we have them for roads, they go with public roads and so on. We try to departmentalize the payments.
Thank you. Thank you.
Further questions, council? Councilor Hamlin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have one question and also a comment. My question is, first of all, I'd like to say thank you. You guys are doing amazing work out of that building. I noticed one of your priorities for this year is begin more overt investment attraction efforts. And to me, that means, and I just want to ask you, actually going out and, as opposed to supporting the business we have here and trying to grow it, but actually going out and trying to bring some business into town. Is that what that means?
Through you, Mayor Sawerson. Yes, and it's a multi-phase approach. One of the first things we have to do is change the perception that Collingwood is just a nice place to go and visit as a tourism place. There are lots of people that come up here every single weekend that would love to live here and have no idea about the tech jobs that or advanced knowledge economy jobs that are right here. And if you go to livemorenow.ca, you'll actually see 16 jobs listed there from about 6 different companies going, we are desperate for people, please, please, please apply. So that's really the first stepping stone. The next one is, of course, going, well, what about that company that you were thinking about setting up? Maybe you should set it up in this wonderful place that you come to visit on the weekends anyhow and fight the traffic, so maybe you should start setting it up over here. And this is where CEO Me's comments this morning, I think, were really important in terms of making sure that we can make it easy for them to actually come and do business here, find a location, build. So yes, that would certainly be part of this campaign that we're really trying to ramp up, lay the foundation this year so that we can continue, if you will, attracting not only employees but ultimately the companies.
Thank you, that's so exciting to hear that. So then my comment is, and it relates to your first slide, which was about you noted it was a great place to live. And I have to say, and I hate to make it all about the third and five, but one of the reasons I am so passionate about our neighborhoods is not just for our families and safety and all of the things that you heard about today that are important, but also because I believe that we have to have great neighborhoods to attract people who want to set up their businesses here in town. Many, many years ago, I had the opportunity to be working with Frank Clayton, who's an economist who specializes in all things relating to development of communities. And he's now a prof, I believe, at Ryerson, because he's retired. But he did a study on a project I was involved in and really drilled down to where do entrepreneurs decide to put their businesses. And believe it or not, the main criteria was it had to be within a 15-minute drive of where they live. So I just want to add that into, we have lots of discussion ahead of us as we, look at our official plan in the coming year. But I really think that protecting our neighborhoods and making sure that people who might come here to invest their dollars in businesses and employ people know that we protect our neighborhoods. So can you add this?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to piggyback off Councillor Hamlin's comments because it is up for flavor today and we are creating a little potpourri of comments. So, Martin, I think there that what you do is you talk to businesses and you help them attract them to Collingwood, obviously. And it says in one of the comments here that some of the things they find favorable are access to public spaces like the harbor, trails, and other recreational amenities were deemed important. Can you expand on that a little bit about the quality, like the type of lifestyle that so we talk about tech, it's what's the flavor of the community that they're looking for while we make these budget decisions that ultimately tie into what you're trying to sell.
Thank you, through Mayor Sawerson. I think the community-based strategic plan actually lays a very good foundation for what they're looking for. Arts and culture, lifestyle, waterfront, it's there. Obviously, how that gets addressed on a day-to-day basis, that's why we're here, that's why we're talking about budgets. The information that you quoted comes from the business survey that we did, where we're specifically asking for businesses to give us a sense of what's important to them, what's keeping them here, what's attracting them here, what's attracting their employees in particular, because that probably is our biggest barrier to growth right now, is these companies not having enough employees to fuel their growth. So within that context, we were asking that question.
That's very good, thank you. Yes, because we saw some flavor here today. Councillor Doherty, Councillor Hamlin, and we're working on assumptions that this is a diva culture that we're trying to promote, and the budget dollars we're trying to set aside for these type of amenities facilities. But we'll look to some of the actual research that your department has conducted, sort of back up that instinct in addition to what we're hearing from the public today. So those sort of statistics and things are very helpful to the decision-making process. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Benjamin. Thank you very much. Thank you for waiting. Last was no. Oh wait, no, we have the library.
very tired. Been here a long time, so I'll try and make my presentation very short and succinct. So if you don't take anything else away today, this is a slide I want you to remember. This is what I'm going to be hammering on. I was hired in 2013. I've been keeping stats since then. These stats go to the end of 2018. So already in the first 2 months of this year, we've noticed things are still growing. So when I say, we have 84% growth in programs, for instance, since 2013, I'm sure that number's going to go up by the end of this year. So the library is very busy. It's busier than it's ever been. We're doing fine. I mean, we're coping. We're offering lots of programs. Things are really good. Every year I've come to council and I wanted to ask for more staff. And every year I've hesitated because I had a pretty good idea I would be turned down. So this year I'm going to risk it. And I'm going to ask for another person to come and work at the library. So that's my big budget ask this year. It's not a big surprise to anyone. You know, that's what I'm asking for. You have the next slide? Next. So I showed you this slide the other day. I just wanted to remind you that one of the things we did last year was we really bumped up our programs. This came after the strategic planning that the library board did. And the people we talked to said they wanted to see more programs, particularly for seniors, programs for new Canadians. People were saying, why aren't you going out into the schools and visiting colleges? So we did. We made a real effort. We've expanded our outreach programs not only to schools and we went to college last year, but also we've been going out to nursing homes, retirement homes, and most recently started visiting Blue Mountain residents on a regular basis. So that unfortunately takes people out of the building, as you probably gathered. So that's a bit more of a stress on our staffing, but it's been very successful. So we were quite proud of that. So next slide. I pushed this up the other day as well. So our budget pressures really are growing. We know more and more people are using the library, more and more people are moving to Collingwood, so there's more pressure on our services. I mentioned that more library services are moving online and that those are very expensive. Now we've been able to cover that so far by working with other libraries in Central County, and we've been doing consortium buying, and that's been great, so we've been okay there. And as I've mentioned before, we have a growing population of citizens who are at risk and living below the poverty line, and many of them come into the library on a daily basis. Last slide. Okay, and the key highlights. So these are the things we're hoping to do. And actually, maybe rather than looking at this slide, just turn to page 204 in your book. That's our capital budget. You can see it all lined out there. So we're not making much in the way of capital budget requests. So 204 for those of you. The top two capital budget requests will be covered by the library reserves. So that's money we're setting aside. Every year we try to replace 3 or 4 computers in the public area. We do this by just taking the money we get from printing things off in the library and pushing it back into our reserve funds. So that brings in about $6,000 a year. So that we just keep recycling and putting up new computers. We need to replace the smart board and the tech suite. So that's coming to the end of its life. The triple is really bad. We also want to finish the project on the library roof, which has been ongoing. But that money has come from the province, from a corporate donation, and partly from money from the town that was approved a couple of years ago. Security cameras and that is part of just safety in the building, and that's ongoing. That job's actually almost done. And the accessible entry doors I mentioned before, we've had complaints about the doors and how hard it is to get into the building. In fact, last night, that front door, we couldn't get it locked. It's on an angle again, so these things need to be fixed. So we're asking for $100,000 to be set aside there, just to either repair or completely rebuild those doors and make them more accessible. So those I think are all fairly reasonable capital requests. Nothing there that as you can see is coming out of current taxation that we have to worry about. And my big ask is for another staff member. I haven't changed the operating budget. It's the same operating budget as last year. It's been just adjusted for inflation. Some of my staff members are fairly young, so they still have step-ups in salaries, so that's included in any unavoidable increases. We've put in $64,000 for another staff member, and that completes the this is in order to do all those programs that I was telling you about, we've kind of just parceled them out to people that are already in the library. And all of the seniors programs, for example, I went to Lori. Lori is one of our clerks. She assists with a lot of administration stuff, finance and overdues and stuff like that. But she was already doing the Books on Wheels program for us. She was going out to nursing homes and to shut-ins, delivering Books on Wheels. She was interested in services to seniors. So I approached her and said, well, we need to do something because people are asking us. Let's do it as a pilot. How would you like to take on some of this program? She loved the idea. She's done a whole bunch of different things. They've been wildly successful. I have a stack of letters on my desk this thick from people saying, thank you for all the seniors programs you're offering us. We really appreciate it. We want you to do more. My problem is it's not really Lori's job to do these things. So other things she's supposed to be doing aren't really getting done. So this is why I'm asking for another person. Right now, adult and senior programming is kind of being spread between 6 different people, myself included. I can apologize to Frida. I missed a lot of Hardhead meetings last year, often because I was the only person here on the second floor because other people were away. So things like that. So I think the time has come. The other thing I wanted to point out is that when this building opened in 2010, we actually had more staff than we have now. And I don't know if there's any other department in the town who can say they're actually operating now with fewer staff than they had 10 years ago. I don't think that's the case. So what I'm really asking for you to do is to restore the staffing to what it was in 2010. We lost staff members over the years, so we continue to do our jobs, we continue to get everything done. But I think the time is maybe now we sort of bump it up. We know we're getting more busy. We know the town is growing. We know in the future it's just going to get busier. And to be honest, as I said, I didn't think this was going to fly in previous councils, but you guys are a new council. Marjorie pointed out that we're actually in a very good budget position this year. So this is why you're here to ask. I guess that's my budget presentation.
Thank you, Ken. I'll ask the audience if anyone has any comments on Director Hayes' presentation. Seeing none, I'll go to council. Any comments? Mrs. Doherty.
Thank you. And I will just make the comment, looking at the user fee line for this department. So we're seeing a decline, and I realize that this may be a conservative estimate from 2017 and then sort of a forecasted flat line. And I'm thinking about the nature of the business and the fact that we're going increasingly digital. And it seems that we may need to start looking at some alternative revenue streams because the services are increasing for a good reason because people are utilizing the service and more people are coming. But it runs the risk of becoming an increasing burden as opposed to a sustaining service, if you get me. So I guess where I'm going with all of that is that among some of our revenue generating initiatives, something to help bolster revenue for the library might be something in particular that we could look for. That's my comment.
Through you, Your Worship, there's 2 things there that I'd like to address. The first is that $400 going down is a bit of this leading thing because what we did last year in an effort to start raising more money for the libraries, we formed the Friends of the Library. Now they're only just started last fall. But what we did then was a lot of the fundraising we were doing in-house, we sort of offloaded to them, so we took it out of the budget. So that line of the budget is actually smaller because we're expecting them to come from that money this year. So that's one reason why that was smaller. The other thing, I guess it's a philosophical thing. I would think it would be great if we found other ways in the town to raise money for the library, but I'm very reluctant to charge people for services in the library. Kind of on a philosophical thing, one of the things that's great about the library is anybody can come here, anybody can use our services, anybody can use our programs, and there's no fee attached. So, and that's something that we always felt very strongly about, and the board, I think, has always felt very strongly about. So we're trying to look for outside ways
Through you, Your Worship, to Director Hay. I'm looking at kind of these numbers about people coming through the doors versus people taking out materials or interacting with the collection. And so 330,000 people came through the doors last year, according to page 201. And circulation was 241,000 paper and electronic reading pieces. Tell me about how that is different. I mean, are you sensing that a lot of the people who are coming through the doors are there to be warm and safe, rather than to read and learn?
Yeah, through your worship, we certainly have a significant population who are coming in to be warm and be safe. We did see for the first time last year a decline in circulation of paper materials. And to be fair, that happened to us later than it's happened to other libraries in the province. So there does seem to be a drop in circulation of paper materials, even while electronic materials is going up. That's going down. I think the reason it's slower to happen here is that we have an aging population, and these are people who are used to reading in paper, and that's what they prefer. So I think we are going to see either a bit of a decline or just sort of stagnation there. And that's just sort of the reality. And I guess part of our challenge is as a public library, we have to see ourselves as more than just bookshelves and circulating books. Part of the reason we're running more of these programs is we see that as part of our mandate. If we're providing people with information, for example, it doesn't have to be information found between the covers of the book. It could be a speaker we bring in or a workshop that we do, something like that. I'm disappointed as a reader. I'd like to see more books circulating, but I think that's just the reality of our society. So yes, more people coming in the door, fewer books circulating just seems to be the way things are now everywhere, not just in Collingwood.
Through you, Your Worship, what percentage do you think, Director Hay, your staff are spending dealing with the influx of people who are vulnerable in our town, the homeless, the possibly homeless, the almost homeless, and vulnerable?
Through your worship, I couldn't put an exact percentage of their time, but a significantly more than 10 years ago, for sure. It seems to take up a fair bit of my time. I get called down to the desk when things go a little crazy, and I have to escort people from the building or just talk to them, calm people down. Our teen services librarian, that's become a huge part of her job, more than she thought it was going to be. I mean, when you take that job, you have these visions of doing fun craft programs for teens, right? But what you end up doing is a lot of social service, finding people a bed for the night or making sure that they're fed, that kind of stuff. Calling social workers, she spends a lot of time doing that. So, but I couldn't tell you an exact percentage, just more than I ever expected it would be.
Thank you.
I think I have Councilor Byrne and Councilor Chen.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. It's interesting because Ken, I think when you started the draft budget, I didn't envision sitting here and I didn't envision being back on the library board. And I think I also probably led the unanimous support of the previous board for you to ask for far more than what you asked for a year. It's what I'm going to say with the accessible entrance doors that Ken's talking about, as I tend to do, was going back through minutes of. Is that what I really sound like? Can we turn it on? I was going through, as I tend to do, minutes of the previous council, and I found the earliest reference to the library doors, and may go back further than that, was April 2015, of the doors to this municipal building having issues.
I think we're discussing the warranty.
So I do, I can't help but think that if it were the doors to any of the other municipal buildings, it would have gone on as long as it has. So I certainly hope that's something that gets addressed. And probably for people that have been on boards for previous councils, it's a little bit almost emotional listening to Ken have to leave for an extra staff member when you've spent 4 years admiring the people that work there, and even at the museum, which I don't think is represented today. That's my bet.
Good, thank you. Maybe we can put the mics in. Councilor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson, through to Mr. Doctor. My question is in terms of, we're not really technically a regional library, but I get the sense that we are. So the people who pay, for their non-resident cards, they don't really need the card. Like non-residents can still come through the door and do everything within the building and all the programs in the building. The only time they need the card is to take some resources out of the building, correct? So there could be a lot of use outside of us being a regional library where our residents are paying for everything, correct? Is there a portion of that? It's like where we're not, there's no way of collecting revenue for people who are coming, say, from town of Blue Mountains, which is a library, who aren't taking things out of the library.
I'm not sure how we would do that.
I'm not either, but I know we have to the library and know the wear and tear.
That is true. A lot of people come here to study or to research. A lot of people come to attend our programs. I run a writing program twice a month, and most of the people who are in it are from St. Beach. But they come here because we're offering that program, and it's free.
Mayor.
Thank you, through you to the CEO.
I know, it sounds stupid, doesn't it?
Yeah,
That's all right.
That's all. They actually, they were intended as questions, but they in fact maybe more comment. But to piggyback on Councillor Jeffrey and non-resident use, I think that what you're asking for is quite reasonable in the context of this budget, but looking towards next year's budget, it would be interesting to maybe see some numbers, and if there's any anticipated usage difference when the library steamer comes on board, and or as a result of Blue Mountains, I guess in the last 2 weeks, Nixon with that and move ahead with their expansion. Just of those two communities, if that has any impact on next year. It's a comment for next year's question. And then the other, talking about revenue sources, to bring you on the roof finally. And that would be an area where I would suggest maybe we do look at that as a revenue source. Because I think there are some unique opportunities to the people who want to use it that are maybe above and beyond sort of the philosophical rationale within the building itself. I'll leave it at that.
Just through your worship, we do charge rent for room rentals. And in fact, today there were 10 different meetings being held in this building. This was just one of those. So we do get some revenue from room rentals, and we will be charging for people to use the roof as well. So we hadn't anticipated charging more for the roof. We were going to charge the same rate, but so there should be some revenue coming in from that as well.
I think Councillor Jeffrey makes a really good point that as I use, and I wonder if things like, if there are other things like this, maybe through to the CAO, like the whole nice rank and things like that, where there's no way to regulate who's using it, if that's worth looking at more than just the library. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
Sure, it's something we can put into the mix. We're coming up to 5:15, and before I call the vote to extend, so we can just figure out what we have to do, I do have a few comments, and I have to say, Ken, in the years that I've been on council, I've really come to appreciate for the bang for the buck we get for your budget. It's an incredible resource for this community, and yes, it's good for both ways to lessen the burden, I guess, especially from outside users. But I have to say, having been down in the county, you are a bellwether that's come in the last 4 years. New Canadians initiative, that's come in the last 4 years. Youth, Barbara Whitehouse is the director of all of what went on inside of this building. And at risk, we've become more aware of homelessness and just food security in general. So I absolutely support the budget. I'm going to support your new employee. It's news to me that we're now going back to where you were in 2010. It seems shocking to me, but this programs that come in and out of here and the outreach and the seniors programs, I wish all our programs could be as efficient as yours. So congratulations and thank your staff. With that, we're at 5:15. So if we want to continue with our discussions, we need to get a motion supported by 2/3 of us to stay here for at least another hour. Or not at least, up to another hour. At least. All right, so Councilor Doherty, Councilor Jeffrey, this is for up to another hour, takes us to 6:15. All those in favor? And that seems to be unanimous. So having accomplished that, what's next on the agenda? Sarah.
Certainly through worship to the committee. Basically, we've indicated the only item that we would really come back to this evening with the capital levy component or discussion. And then from there, we have our list of parking lot items that we can circulate prior to next Thursday's meeting for everyone's consideration.
Okay. Councilor Jeff.
If I can't be here for the next two budget, can I ask two other questions beyond the motion for the special levy?
Sure, yeah.
I'll be very succinct.
So you want to do that now and then get to the capital levy? So go on.
So my question was just on, I don't know why, whether I read over it, but I don't see the budgeted supplementals. We used to see them, are they netted into a line item here for the taxes?
Yes, this year we, through you, this year we budgeted up to 500,000 for that in the revenues. Tax-related revenues. It's $1,095,000 this year.
Oh, all right, thank you. So my question regarding the county plan, their rolling 5-year average, would that have an impact on this budget if we consider the motion with respect to that? The mayor, the deputy mayor, probably explain it more clearly than I can, but is that something that we do after the budget? Because it would impact any amounts over and above the 500, although our policy only says it goes to something else. I'm just not sure how that works into this budget.
I guess I can answer. The county's perspective, they just take the 5-year rolling average and supplement with increased assessment, and anything above that average in the following year goes to specific allocated reserves. That's the policy there. So I guess I would then turn that to the treasurer. If we were looking at adopting a similar policy, you're asking how does that affect us in the upcoming 2019 year? And I'll ask Marjorie to answer that.
Through you, your worship, I'd have to go back and take a look at the volumes of it, but it would increase our tax rate this year. We can look at it and do an analysis together for the 2020.
Yeah. Outstanding. Thank you. That was it. That's other than my motion for the discussion.
So do we then want to deal with the capital levy now? Marjorie.
Through you, your worship, we have recommended that we increase the capital levy up to 2%, and I believe Councillor Jeffrey has suggested that we phase that in over 3 years. So, and I have no objections to that. It will just take us a little longer to get to where we're going. It's a start in the right direction.
So at 1%, it's a 1% increase for over the next 3 years. Is that the plan? Yes, please. That would be great.
That the committee herein requests the capital levy increase be phased in over 3 years, beginning with a levy of 1% in 2019, which really leaves the last 2 years flexible. If we're ready to go up to 2 the next year, we can, and if we're not, then just delay it out. But I like phasing it in rather than the big jump.
Okay, and we were at 0.75, so that,
Yes.
what we're talking about is a 0.25% increase for this year. All right, now my understanding that's going over to the next meeting then, or we can vote on that now. All right, then we have a seconder for Councillor Jeffrey's motion, and then we can get on the table for discussion. Councillor Doherty. Councillor, questions or comments then on Councillor Jeffrey's motion? Councillor Hannah.
I just have a few questions. If we were to adopt a budget that staff's presented to us, I know that other than the capital levy, we have a decrease. With the capital levy as proposed, what would be the overall impact on our taxes?
Through you, Your Worship, if we consider the $100,000 saving from the airport and we would adopt the proposed budget, it would actually bring decrease the amount the taxpayer was paying to about $44, and if we went for the full increase of 2% on the capital levy, it would cost $43, so it would be a wash, basically.
So for the average homeowner, if we implemented this capital levy as proposed, there would be no increase of taxes?
It's in combination with the proposed budget that we have, the proposed levy of the 31 million, and as I say, with the $100,000 saving in the airport, it'd be 31,478,000 change. If you adopt that, that would result in a decrease in the tax of $44. And if we adopted the 2% levy, it would be a $43 charge to the taxpayer, so it would basically be a wash.
I have one other question, but I'll let you ask it first, because she's really interested.
No, just, is this working or am I just?
No.
No, it's not. So my question is that proposed is before the discretionary spending and the enhanced spending, so there's no guarantee that we're gonna land at the proposed.
Through you, Your Worship, that's absolutely correct. If we decide to put more things in, add things to that. I just assume, well, the budget as staff prepared and presented is what we're going off when I gave you those figures, Councillor Hammond.
So my other, sorry if I could, sorry,
Go ahead.
through you, Your Worship. Yeah. So I wanted to know, I thought you gave a compelling case about why we needed to start putting aside more money in our capital budget to prepare for future obligations. So I'm just wondering what the impact would be if we're delaying, if you know what the impact would be to delay the putting aside of funds by spreading it out.
Through you, Your Worship, it would just take us a year longer to start building it up. Like a 1% increase, as the Mayor referred to earlier, is $310,000. So we'll be going from about $250,000 in the capital levy this year to $310,000, as opposed to going to $620,000.
Thank you.
And my understanding, I'll confirm with the clerk, if we pass this motion in SIC, it can still be not reconsidered but redone at the council when we're actually passing the budget. So working forward, if we actually decided when we go through the supplementals and enhancements that we want to go back to the initial plan or change to 1%, we can still entertain that. It's just really essentially a recommendation from the SIC. So it can all be revisited on the council meeting in which we determine the budget. Even at the next SIC meeting, we can change the recommendation. So that's just by way of background to say we're not necessarily locking in right now, but we're certainly considering the motion. So any other questions or comments on this proposal? If you want, I'm going to go around first. If no one else speaks, I'll come back to you. Anyone else? Back to you, Yvonne. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I just, my questions, I just wanted to end with a comment, which is, it just seems to me the province is starting to ask municipalities to step up and make sure they have the funds in place to replace their infrastructure and to maintain their infrastructure. And I think, given that this year our staff has done such a good job to bring in changes to the budget, we're actually a decrease, that if we can start this year by, putting money into our capital replacement funds, this is a good year to do it. Where there will be no increase in taxes for our taxpayers for 2019 by adopting that rule. So I just wanted to say I would not be in favor of Councillor Jeffrey's motion.
All right, there's no other comments then. I'm going to call the vote then in favor. Everyone understand the vote? Then the vote on the table. So all in favor? Opposed? I think we got a tie, so that I think defeats the motion. Am I correct? So that is defeated. So then the current recommendation still remains on the table, and that's the 2%. Capital wedge. So I think just going forward, I think we were entertaining that as a change to it, but we'll carry it forward. I think we'll let them know for a motion on the 2% now. So it's now 5:30. It's been a long day, haven't we? And I think we're going to carry forward the other recommendations that were coming forward to request to the next meeting. So that being done, thank you very much everyone for, Councillor Hanlon.
Sir, I just have a question about process for next Thursday.
Yes.
Would this be a good time to ask that?
Sure, yeah.
So I'm just wondering what exactly we're doing next Thursday, because I know the 25th was the day for approving the budget, if I understood it correctly. And so I'm just wondering when we'll be actually having the debate on the budget. And I put this in this context. We just, I know we all have obligations beyond this council table. And we just heard a few days ago that we're having the meeting next Thursday. And I, in fact, had made some plans to be away because it's, after the Monday council meeting, because it is March break. And we had nothing in our calendar. So now we do have things in our calendar. And my if I was to change my plans, it impacts on a number of people other than myself. So I am reluctant, although I thought I would change my plans, I'm realizing this is probably a bad idea. So I am just wondering, and I should say as an aside, I think once we're through the budget process, I will be asking council to consider having some kind of timeline in place for when we know we're going to have council meetings, because I am finding it quite difficult to deal with last minute scheduled council meetings. But that's an aside for later. But I just want to know what exactly we're dealing with Thursday, because I'm the one line to not impact other people's lives by being here.
So my understanding is it's an SIC meeting. So again, recommendations can be made at the SIC meeting when we're receiving the budget, but ultimately the budget deliberations, the final budget deliberations will be March 25th at council, and anything that comes from the SIC is not binding. It will be voted on at that meeting, but having said that, I'll pass it over to the clerk just to confirm I'm correct on that, and any other changes, or where the CA, whoever wants to take.
Certainly, I'll address it first in our discussion in scheduling this meeting with finance. Was generally, so next Thursday between 4 and 6, the committee would review and hash out any of the items that have been put through the parking lot time discussion today. Then between 6 and 6:45, the public will have their opportunity to network and mingle with members of council and staff that are available to discuss any concerns they might have. And then there's a public forum after the informal conversations, should they still be very concerned about specific budget items, then they can appear before council at 6:45 and express the areas of budget that they would like to see implemented, and then council at that time can consider amendment. Otherwise, if there's no significant changes or the committee does not make any further decisions at that meeting, we have discussed opportunity before the development and operations meeting on the Monday following to have that a further conversation with the SIC committee, because what's presented and what goes forward to council on the 25th is the formal bylaw with the amounts as agreed upon. So at that council meeting, it wouldn't be debated unless there was any, outstanding items that council members want to raise, but you will have the formal budget before you.
So on the March 25th, if someone wanted to change a line item, or make a change, they can't suggest that. It's just the bylaw, or you doing that?
So if they're not in favor of an item, they can still make a suggestion at that time.
Just a few other comments, Your Worship. The meeting next Thursday as well is also to provide an opportunity for council to deal with any items that we haven't dealt with but you think is important to deal with. So we need to kind of elevate the discussion in my mind to deal with some of the more cross-cutting issue. So I sort of provided a context about what it is that we should consider enterprise-wide, and we went through the department by department budget. So my expectation is that in addition to us having a bit of a discussion on those items that we've identified today, that we can perhaps also have a general discussion about what else council would like to be considered as part of this or future budget. One thing that we haven't talked about and did not come up in the discussion, I meant to bring it up in my own presentation, was the issue of looking at other ways of delivering services to the community. We had a bit of a conversation at the tail end of the last budget in 2018, but we didn't have any discussion about that during the last couple of meetings we had on the budget deliberation. So in addition to dealing with the items that the clerk has identified, I think it would be also helpful for us to have a bit of conversation on the cross-cutting, the more horizontally based issues and the ones that require some strategic consideration. What we presented to you is our staff take and our best evidence as to how we should proceed with the budget. Council may have perspective that I think we'd be interested in hearing from, and then subsequent to that meeting we'll have an engagement with the community that could perhaps also provide some insight into how we deliver this budget on the 25th of March. So I guess next Thursday would be another opportunity for council to again reflect on what they've heard today and bring back any considerations for this or for future budget.
Thank you for that explanation. So I would say that the next meeting is rather important, and I would just like to bring a motion forward this time that council defer that meeting to the week following.
To the Monday?
I'm flexible, I'm fine. Staff would have to advise.
Through you, Your Worship, I'm not here, but that doesn't mean the discussions can occur. I had plans for next week, and I changed it as a result of the Thursday meeting. If there's a deferral to the following week, I won't be here, but like I said, deliberations can certainly continue without me.
Well, this is my problem exactly. I've got plans against the panel meeting.
I just will find yesterday.
You and I should have talked. Well,
Okay.
we can't do it without the CAO, right? That's what.
So we can't put that on the table. I guess just from the clerk, the March 14 date next Thursday has been advertised, but there's nothing to prevent us from having the coffee without the meeting, I guess is what I'm hearing.
We could schedule that Monday.
The Monday,
If everybody is available, Monday.
the Monday the 25th.
No,
The 18th, okay, 18th, sorry, okay. So, right.
And again, during committee meeting, any matter can be reconsidered. So if a matter is decided next Thursday, then everybody comes together, you have an opportunity to further review
I guess, we're going, it sounds to me like we're locked in for the Thursday evening open session with the public. Yes, Thursday the 14th. And then the issue, and Councillor Hamlin, do you have a seconder for the deferral? Councillor Jeffrey, then the issue is, would you have any meeting at all on the Thursday and then the meeting on the following Monday, or just go with the meeting on the following Monday, and based on the motion for the deferral, it would just be the motion for the meeting on the Monday, and it would be only a meeting with the public on the Thursday, the 14th. Did I summarize that correct? Okay. So, Councillor Hamlin, you can clarify if you're asking for the meeting to be deferred or just another meeting scheduled for the Monday, meaning that the public engagement would still go forward, but is your request that there be no meeting and it just be deferred to the Monday outright?
That would be my request.
Okay. All right. Yes. So, we could throw it in the, can we talk about this, or how does this go? We're there for 6:45, or, sorry, the timing of the money. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So certainly what we were anticipating was that would be any collective final comments and decisions that would be made on that Monday, which is the 18th, I believe. But we would be looking at a meeting between 1 and 4, and then having a recess before the general meeting.
All right. Questions or comments on that before we call the vote? Is everyone comfortable going on the 18th between 1 and 4? She's just asking that the meeting be deferred, but the public session continue. Is that correct? You're not asking that the public meeting be deferred?
I'm content with either.
Right. Yes, I think we understand that. So I think we're not entertaining the idea that the public meeting be deferred because it's already been put out there. Or what we're talking about is the actual meeting, whether or not we the full request on the floor, as I understand it, Councillor Hamlin can correct me, is that we're not going to meet on Thursday other than the public session, and that meeting will now take place on Monday the 18th between 1 and 4.
Yes, thank you.
Right. Are you back to 23rd? So, from an administrative perspective, does this cause issue? Is it? Yeah. Right. And the report, I guess, so I'm clear, because I think you just mentioned, Fareed, in your discussion that you were going to talk at the next meeting about ways to look at the other revenue generating tools and mechanisms. Okay, Councilor Jeffrey.
Could we just add maybe a 2-hour meeting for some of us who had to be away that week, which was planned a year ago, to just to add another meeting so we can have a check-in and if there's anything else, so we can get the pulse of the live stream on the public input and at least have input before the 25th, because like the clerk has said, you're presenting the bylaw, you don't want a lot of that discussion going on if there's the potential for a lot of questions, so can't we do both? Can't we let our CAO be here for the meeting on the Thursday, but have another one last check-in on the 18th before we get to the 25th? But I'd be happy with that.
Okay.
That was
Staff's recommendation is then that we continue with the meeting on Thursday and the public session, and then we have a meeting on the Monday to finalize the recommendations going forward to the meeting on the 25th. That's what? No, that's not Elon's motion, I understand, but I'm just trying to clarify what we're aiming for here. So we know what we're aiming for. Yes.
Would the same session that we are thinking of for the 18th be unacceptable on the 25th? Would
time to get it final. No, I'm still shaking heads. It must be circulated.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then I guess firstly, then we have to deal with the motion on the table, which is to have the public session, but no meeting on the Thursday and have the meeting only on the Monday. So we have to deal with that.
May I ask one further question? Which is, can the meeting on the Thursday be set up so I can participate, over the phone, electronically?
I'm not sure our bylaw permits that, but I'll look to the clerk.
Our procedural bylaw doesn't provide for, sorry, through the chair, our procedural bylaw doesn't provide for council electronic participation at this time. So it only includes our advisory committees and boards.
So we could vote to change that if there was, right now, if there was technology, I think my question. Is there technology? I just want to participate in the budget discussions, that's all.
So, through your worship, I mean, what I will do, I will change my plans and so we can have the meeting on the 18th and you and I can talk offline about what the implications of that is. But I mean, I think we need to get this budget approved. My intention, and that's why we try to accelerate the schedule, was to try and get it done before the end of March. So I'd like us to move in that direction. We've got some additional pressures coming with regards to some other things that are happening in the municipality. So we can go for the 18th and we can chat offline about if that's it on the council.
Right. Does the bylaw permit for the CAO to participate? All right, well, given that CAO's willingness to change plans, then let's move forward with the motion that we will be having a public session on the 13th, and then no meeting, and the meeting will occur on the 18th between 1 and 4. The 14th is the Thursday. And Monday is the evening. Is that right? Okay. So having said that, then I'll call the all those in favor. All right. Here's a question to the clerk then. If we do the meeting on the Thursday, and we have a follow-up meeting on the Monday, at which Councillor Hanlon can participate, is there ways that any recommendation from the Thursday can be deferred to the Monday, so she's here for the vote, or is there a mechanic so we can make sure that she's able to participate along with Councillor Guthrie on the Monday?
Certainly through your worship, to the committee. So basically, through the budget deliberation process, you can have your public input session on a Thursday. You can make all your decisions. We can schedule the meeting for Monday still, and if councillors Vaughn, Hamlin, and Councillor Jeffrey come back and they have any concerns with any of those motions, they can put forward a motion again, requesting something different than what was already agreed upon. And if that's approved by the committee, then that's will be what goes forward. If it's defeated, then the original motion can stand. But you don't need a motion for reconsideration.
Does that work for everyone? Okay. So the way this is going to go forward then, as I understand it, is that we're going to have our meeting next Thursday. We're going to have our public engagement. We're also going to have a meeting the following Monday where all the final decisions will be vetted and go forward before the 25th council meeting on the bylaw. Hopefully that addresses your concerns.
I just will finish by saying I'm really unhappy with these last minute changes, and I really see what's happened. I changed mine, Brady changes his, like there's no easy way to do this when we only have 3 days notice of a meeting. So, I just wanna say, I really want, us to think hard about how we're doing these meetings, because it's really not fair. And there are definitely some things I need to address as part of this budget. We heard some residents here today, I want to bring that up. So, anyway, I'll have to figure out, I'm
memo from BLG, who was our lawyers that acted on our behalf in the transaction. And I think the mayor did circulate an email to members of council with the preliminary numbers. The numbers haven't changed. The net proceeds is 16.355 million. But that does not include the full cost for the legal fees associated with the transaction. But it does include the indemnity that we provided to EPCOR vis-a-vis the judicial review. It also includes the 150,000 that they had contributed to the waterfront master plan. In addition to the 16.355 that we received by way of proceeds, we will also receive close to 192,000 annually for the leasing of the building on Stewart Road. So over a 10-year period, we're looking at close to $1 million from that lease arrangements. So net proceeds 16.355, ongoing cost for leasing the facilities 191,000 annually.
Thank you very much. Unless there's any other comments, I'll look for a motion for adjournment. Councillor Jeffrey, all in favor? Very good. Thank you very much, everyone.